sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, we've got a colder week ahead, especially compared to last week. Sunny spells, scattered showers with the return of some overnight frost. So we've got a band of rain across northern parts of Scotland into northern England. This is a cold front introducing colder air behind it. Across much of England and Wales, it is going to be a little bit cloudier than recent days, with perhaps some outbreaks of rain across the south coast. But there'll be some brighter interludes in between, with murky conditions along the eastern coast. But across the south, still, temperatures not doing too bad, 13 to 15 degrees. But in the north, that's where we'll see the change to colder conditions, so a colder day to come. Now, as we go through Monday evening, it's a case of clear spells across Scotland with some showers, especially across eastern areas, and turning much colder once that sun dips away. Cloudier skies across Northern Ireland and into northern parts of England with some patchy outbreaks of rain. That's gradually going to sink its way southwards and through into Monday around 6 p.m, still seeing some outbreaks of rain across the far southwest. So as we go through Monday night and into Tuesday, clearer skies developing across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, with cloudier skies further towards the south of that. There'll be some frequent showers as well down the east coast, some of these a little bit wintry, but we will see the return of frost. So a colder start to Tuesday morning, especially across the northern half of the UK. So as we go through Tuesday morning, then it is a case of some bright skies, especially across the north, but cloud will gradually clear its way southwards, so turning drier across southern parts of England with some occasional sunny spells, but frequent showers across eastern areas. Some of these are still wintry, and for all of us, temperatures are falling closer to average at around 6 to 10 degrees. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could have £17,777 in tax-free cash to play with this spring. Cash to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we're also going to give you not one, but two sought-after designer watches and the latest Mulberry handbag. How would winning that sound? For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Monday, the 10th of March. I'm Dawn Neeson.
And I'm Miriam Cates.
OK, what happened to my father should never have happened, says Katie Amess, as Home Secretary Yvette Cooper rejects calls for a public inquiry into the death of her father, David Amess. She described the decision as an absolute insult and betrayal to her family. We'll have the latest on that breaking story, and it's a heartbreaking story, it really is.
And some more breaking news. In just the last few minutes, the Home Office have confirmed that the anti-Semitic Palestinian asylum seeker Abu Wadeh, who crossed the Channel last week, has been arrested. At least 150 migrants have crossed the Channel illegally this morning in an unprecedented 10th straight day of small boat crossings. It takes the total who've crossed since the 1st of March to more than 2,200. We're getting the latest with our Home and Security Editor.
And it's Commonwealth Day. We'll be live at Westminster Abbey throughout the afternoon.
Yeah, I'm live outside Westminster Abbey right now. The ceremony kicks off this afternoon. The 56 Commonwealth countries here. Together we thrive, the King warning of uncertain times.
And more protesters are out today. Tower Bridge is currently shut as someone has scaled the structure. We'll keep you updated throughout the show.
Oh my God. And some more breaking news emerging. An oil tanker and cargo ship have collided off the east coast of Yorkshire. Helicopter and lifeboats are providing emergency response. We'll bring you the latest on that story as we get it. Incredibly busy afternoon
yes,
we've got
lots
coming
of
up.
breaking news as well.
And it's great to work with you for the first time. And losing my voice already, the excitement. So it's Blonde on Blonde afternoon. And if you're old enough, you'll remember that reference. Do you know Blonde on Blonde?
I'm afraid not.
And they were a female pop group from the 1970s.
Oh,
Two beautiful blonde ladies. So I thought it was quite apt.
Well, hopefully we won't have to sing. But I think we're quite well coordinated as well.
Yeah, we are.
Colours. Very good job. Well, please do send in your comments, not about what we're wearing, but about anything else that we discuss on the show to gbnews.com/your say.
Because it's all about you, it's not about us. It's all about what you think as well. And you can comment on our outfits. Come on, it's
we
a
might
girl
not read
thing.
it out though, Dawn.
Oh, I will. No, definitely will. Definitely will. OK, but first, we can also comment on what Sam Francis is wearing, I think.
That's true.
Because he's here with the headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just after midday. The top story this hour. The family of Sir David Amess have slammed the Home Secretary for rejecting a public inquiry into his murder, calling it unacceptable and insulting. Yvette Cooper says it's hard to see, though, how an inquiry would go beyond the trial of terrorist Ali Harbi Ali and a recent Prevent review. The attacker, an Islamic State fanatic, was referred to Prevent years before stabbing the MP to death at his constituency surgery in 2021. Sir David's widow is now urging the Prime Minister to reconsider ahead of a meeting with him on Wednesday. Well, Sir David's daughter Katie said earlier the response just adds salt to an opened wound and accused the government of brushing the family aside.
The Home Secretary has written to us ahead of our meeting to let us know that we will not be getting the public inquiry that we have been demanding. This decision is an absolute insult and a betrayal to my family and our father's memory.
Breaking news at this hour that a man in his 30s has been arrested for entering the UK without permission. He is believed to be Palestinian asylum seeker Abu Wadi, who allegedly arrived on a migrant boat before posting extremist content on his social media platforms. And it comes on the 10th day in a row that more small boats have reached UK waters. 150 migrants arrived this morning, taking the total since March the 1st to now over 2,200. The government says it is cracking down on small boat crossings and strengthening border security with new police and immigration powers. Ministers also say the border security bill will help remove those with no legal right to stay in the country as part of a £150 million plan to toughen enforcement. And also breaking this hour, news from the North Sea, where we're hearing that the UK Coast Guard is responding to an incident where an oil tanker and a cargo vessel have collided. We believe the location to be near Hull, off the East Yorkshire coast. Some more details just emerging that the ships have collided, with a helicopter rescue team from the Coast Guard responding from Humberside alongside a number of lifeboats from Skegness, Bridlington, Mablethorpe and various other areas. We're also hearing reports that an aircraft is also responding with firefighting capabilities being sent to the area. Any more details we will, of course, keep across and bring you the very latest right here on GB News. In other news, though, two British diplomats are being expelled from Russia, accused of espionage in what's been seen as the latest tit-for-tat move. Moscow says the pair carried out intelligence and subversive work and must leave within 2 weeks. It follows the UK's expulsion of a Russian diplomat last month, part of the ongoing diplomatic standoff. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has vowed to stand by Ukraine, though, and is pledging more defence spending and a coalition of the willing against Russian aggression. Moscow has condemned his calls, though, for a peacekeeping force as tensions between the two countries hit new lows. And just before I hand you back to Miriam and Dawn, let's return now to that breaking news regarding that oil tanker colliding with a cargo vessel in the North Sea. Further details just emerging that the two have both set fire in the North Sea just off the Hull coast, with a fixed-wing aircraft, lifeboats and firefighting teams all responding to the scene. No reports at this stage of any injuries or casualties, and the state of those on board at this stage unknown, but we will try and get the very latest details for you and bring it to you as it happens. For now, though, that is the latest from the newsroom. A full roundup in around half an hour. Now, though, it's over to Miriam and Dawn.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Now, what happened to my father should never, ever have happened, says Katie Amess, as Home Secretary Yvette Cooper rejects calls for a public inquiry into the death of her father, David Amess.
She described the decision as an absolute insult and betrayal to her family during a truly heartbreaking statement just a while ago.
Losing my father has stolen so much from us. In the weeks before his murder, he was helping me to plan my wedding. A day he had looked forward to more than anything. It was his absolute dream to walk one of his children down the aisle at the crypt at the Houses of Parliament, and we were just 6 weeks away from that dream. He had planned everything, from the flowers to the music. He had even planned a surprise photo shoot where my husband was going to wear the same suit that my dad had worn to marry my mum all those years before.
Such a tragic story, and she's been so brave and such a brilliant campaigner. Anyway, our national reporter, Charlie Peters, was in the room for that statement, and he joins us now. Charlie, was this news expected? Was it expected that the Home Secretary would agree to an inquiry?
Well, they haven't agreed to the inquiry, so, well, we didn't know what they were going to say, obviously, ahead of that meeting on Wednesday, but I think people were surprised to see the statement coming out. They were rejecting that claim just 30 minutes before the press conference started, and it was a highly emotional press conference. Katie Amess speaking about her burning anger, but also her desire for justice. Katie also said that she woke up every morning hoping that it was all just a nightmare. She said that she was having therapy, she was taking medication, but she was still scared to be alone, scared to go outside, constantly thinking about her father and that appalling murder in October of 2021 by Islamist terrorist Ali Harbi Ali. But Katie Amess also spoke about that desire for justice, that drive for a public inquiry. And she spoke on behalf of her mother, Lady Amess, who had this statement.
We have spent the last 3 years trying to grieve, but being unable to. Although we can take some small comfort from the fact that his killer will never be released, we feel that from the start we have been denied access to the truth about what led to David's entirely preventable murder. When David was taken from us, we believed, like any family would, that there would be a full and thorough investigation into how and why this was allowed to happen. We trusted that the government would do everything in their power to examine the failures that led to his death and to ensure that no other family endures the pain that we have suffered. Yet despite our repeated calls, we have been denied the one thing that can provide us real answers: a full public inquiry.
Now, Katie Amess, in her own words, said that the attack was an attack on democracy itself. She said it was an incident that had been watered down and brushed under the carpet. Katie Amess also referred to the inquiries launched into the Nottingham and Southport tragedies, asking, is my father's life worth less than those who were victims of those appalling tragedies? And GBNews asked the family representative at this press conference if they thought that the government's rejection of a public inquiry would be a source of inspiration for potential terrorists around the United Kingdom.
What message do you think that Yvette Cooper's letter sends to those who want to target MPs? And if, as you say, the government does not want to learn lessons from this incident? And beyond that also, have you heard recent concerns from other MPs about their safety ahead of this letter being released, and how recent has that concern been?
Thank you, Charlie. I think that's a very important question, because if I were in my bedroom on Google self-radicalizing and I saw this government's approach to the PREVENT program in general, as well as this murder, I think I'd be licking my lips, because I'm learning that they're not really going to do anything other than try to rehabilitate me or re-educate me. There's no mention in PREVENT of the term public safety. And I had thought that PREVENT meant they would prevent Sir David's murder. They would take the guy off the street. It doesn't mean that at all.
Now, since Sir David's murder, there has, of course, been a criminal trial, a PREVENT learning review, which was released public last month, and also a coroner's report. There will also be an interim report by Lord Anderson looking into the circumstances. But we have had a statement from the Security Minister, Dan Jarvis, who said that Sir David Amess's murder was a terrible tragedy, and our heartfelt thoughts continue to be with his family and friends. In the years since this cowardly attack, there have been several reviews asking how this could have been avoided, and we have seen significant improvements to the PREVENT programme, as well as stronger protections for MPs. We understand that the Amess family are still looking for answers, and we take this incredibly seriously. While we do not think a public inquiry would unearth any information that has not already been assessed, the Home Secretary has confirmed that we will further scrutinise all the reviews that have taken place over the last few years. We very much hope this will help the family to get the justice they deserve. Well, Katie Amess at this press conference this morning very emotionally said that they were pleading with the government to reconsider. They will meet with Sir Keir Starmer on Wednesday. However, no media will be able to attend that meeting. Katie Amess said in this press conference this morning that Sir Keir Starmer and the government were not allowing the media to attend because it would not make them look good. But that meeting is set to go ahead on Wednesday.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Charlie will be joining us later in the show to continue with this breaking story. As I said, Katie only gave that statement and heard the news herself this morning. However, joining us now is former Conservative MP and close friend of Sir David Amess, Sir Bill Cash. Bill, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Katie's statement, incredible, almost all in tears in the news floor here. What do you think of what you've heard this morning?
Well, I completely agree with Katie. I also agree with the other comments that I've heard, except for the rejection of this inquiry. Public inquiries are held regularly on really important matters. Nothing could be more important in this context than the idea of somebody who is a member of Parliament being murdered in these circumstances, the details of which have been graphically described on your programme. But at the same time, it's absolutely essential that the things are looked at from the point of view that Katie emphasised, which is the fact that this was an attack on democracy, and the evidence for that is overwhelming.
Now, Bill, there are so many unanswered questions, partly about Prevent, how they knew about the murderer but didn't prevent him, about Essex Police. And Katie claims that she wrote to numerous members of the previous government, many of whom, like you, were David Amess's friends, but heard nothing back. What do you think it is that perhaps the government's trying to hide or that they think might be revealed by a public inquiry of such type?
Well, it's only by making a proper assessment, it's only by actually having an inquiry where the evidence is actually presented in public, where questions can be asked, which go to the heart of our democratic system, which go to the heart of the relationship between members of Parliament and those who would wish to murder them. In circumstances, we've seen it over and over again over the last years. Nothing has been done apart from this extremely ineffective Prevent programme, which has never worked from the very beginning it was set up.
Bill, Sir William Shawcross, who led the inquiry into the Prevent and how well it worked or didn't work, and he said that basically how it is at the moment, it leaves the public at risk. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. William looked at it very carefully. So did many of us. We've been deeply concerned about it. It seems to be almost an excuse programme. That's the problem. It's actually doing something which is trying to push it under the carpet. It's not being done properly. It never was, and at the moment it is not capable of achieving the objectives which any reasonable person would expect. And by the way, it's not just MPs, it's also about government ministers. We've just seen a whole raft of those. Sergeant Harper was murdered inside the House of Commons. I was actually in the House of Commons at the time. There is a whole string of examples, and there are things going on. There was the murder on Tower Bridge, if you remember that too. In fact, I was almost certainly on the same train as the person who committed that murder. And it's an example of the lack of security that is actually bringing our democracy into danger. That is the point. And it's really got to be stopped. They've got to have a proper and effective security measures. But on top of that, they've also got to be honest, and an inquiry is the only way of looking into all these things. There are many public inquiries held, for example, on grooming gangs, things like that, which ought to be really properly done in a way that makes sure that people get to the truth of the matter. We're not doing that, and it's a disgrace, and I'm appalled at the Home Secretary's reaction.
Now, Bill, of course, this does get to the very heart of our democratic values, doesn't it? Because on the one hand, of course, Prevent do not seem to be doing the thing they should be doing, which is preventing these kind of atrocities. And don't forget that Axel Rudy-Cabana, the Southport murder, was also known to prevent. But on the other hand, in a democratic free society, if somebody is accused of terrorist links or seems to have ideological links to terrorism but has not committed a crime, what exactly do you do with them? I imagine you would object to locking people up on suspicion of having these kind of tendencies, but it's also incredibly expensive to monitor every single person who's accused of perhaps being a potential terrorist. So what actually is the answer in a democratic society?
Well, first of all, there is a real question about who is allowed into the country. That is also part of this.
Yeah.
So it actually relates to the question of migration and immigration as well, and the manner in which people are properly monitored. The second thing is that to have a proper public inquiry is where you have it on oath, and the people who are brought together to give evidence can do so in a context which is in the national interest. This is not exclusively about David, terrible and tragic as his particular case is. As Katie said, it's about our democracy. Therefore, you've got to do the job properly. Prevent should be actually called stop. It's not a question of prevent, it's a question of stop. This is going on. It's become increasingly, as I've got more and more experience of politics over the 40 years I was in Parliament, these things were unheard of when I first came in. It's increased, and it's increased in direct connection to the manner in which we've approached the manner in which people have been allowed in this country who should have been deported years ago. If you can find the evidence, which is what they've done, because the man was given a lifelong sentence, that's for sure. But the reality is that the causes of it are all part of the problem. The action itself was terrible and horrible. The question is what caused it? What was the motivation? We were told it was revenge. That is the point. Those are the things that have to be looked at the same time. It's not too sensitive a subject for the matters to be looked at in an inquiry. This is something which is of massive national interest, and it's been growing rather than receding. And Prevent has not achieved its objectives.
Bill,
is the way I would put it.
Indeed, Bill, there are some 800 people on the watch list, as we know. I mean, finally, you alluded quickly there to the migration issue. Just this weekend, we heard about a terrorist, well, an alleged terrorist, who's over here with an avowed intent to kill all Jews. These people are just coming into the country. Most of the time, we don't know who they are, where they're going, or what they're doing. This has to be stopped.
And that's absolutely right. And it's not stirring it up. It's actually dealing with the problem that we've actually got. It's there. It's evident. It's something which needs to be looked at properly. It's not just a question of having occasional debates in the House of Commons. It's a question of actually getting down to the root causes. What is it that's really creating this dangerous situation? The short answer is it's grown exponentially, and it's something which the courts can deal with on individual case, but actually the problem is much more endemic than that. It's much more about the generality of allowing people in, and it also brings into the whole question the Court of Human Rights. It brings in the question of the manner in which the immigration problem can only be resolved by acts of Parliament which are clear and unambiguous. We've got to get real about this, and we've got to do something about it. And actually, the truth is, it's been sitting there as an issue around the public arena, but not dealt with emphatically, not dealt with in the way in which it really needs to be dealt with.
So
inquiry is...
We're running out of time, unfortunately, so Bill, thank you very much for joining us. Wise words, as always.
Wonderful to see you, Bill.
Yeah, thank you. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. We're getting the latest on that breaking news that a tanker and a cargo vessel have collided in the North Sea. We're bringing you the latest pictures for you.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And the BAFTA-winning actress, Daisy May Cooper, isn't holding back about what she thinks about Shakespeare. She thinks it's time to ditch the lot.
Well, comparing his plays to studying EastEnders in 600 years' time, she says that kids would be better off learning from TV dramas. But is she onto something, or is the Bard still a class act?
Sometimes it's better not to say anything, isn't it? Anyway, joining us to discuss this is the lifestyle journalist and parenting expert Annette Kello. Annette, is studying Shakespeare these days the same as if you forced children in 600 years' time to study Pat Butcher?
Exactly. I mean, Pat Butcher's earrings to start with, maybe studying those in 600 years. But I think, while she has a point that it is very old, I think we need to bring it up to speed and not scrap it, but reimagine it so that people today can learn it. The plays are quite long, which might be quite hard for kids to decipher. But I do think there's something in keeping it. We know that there's loads of words. I think it's 1,700 words that Shakespeare invented. And come on, which ones do you know? Swagger?
Oh, we were talking...
Addiction?
This is cheating, because we were talking a bit about this in the break. But assassination, critic, majestic...
Swagger.
and phrases, like, it's all Greek to me. I mean, these things that just roll off the tongue. I mean, it's so important, actually, for understanding our own language more than anything else.
Exactly, and actually Jay-Z quoted that he takes inspiration from Shakespeare because apparently there's something to do with the rhythm that is similar to rapping. So I think things like that can be a really good lesson for children to kind of get in the zone with it, because it's quite hard to learn otherwise.
I mean, I can imagine it's very hard to teach Shakespeare these days to young children, because they are the TikTok generation.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. Now, the other breaking story for you today. The Coast Guard is responding to reports of a collision between a tanker and a cargo vessel off of England's northeastern coast. The Maritime and Coast Guard Agency have said a Coast Guard rescue helicopter from Humberside was called alongside lifeboats and fixed-wing aircraft. The agency has said the incident remains ongoing. We're now joined by GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White to bring us up to date on the story. Good morning, Mark. What's happening?
Well, this is a major sea and air rescue that is currently underway. It's taking place in the Humber estuary, in the outer estuary at the moment. The ships involved are the oil tanker MV Stena Immaculate, which is on fire after being struck by the container ship NV Ceylon while it was at anchor in the outer estuary. Now, we're told that the container ship may be on fire as well, that there is fuel that is spilled into the water, which is currently on fire. So a very difficult and dangerous rescue operation that is underway. The Coast Guard have just released a statement. They said in that statement, an HM Coast Guard spokesman said HM Coast Guard is currently coordinating the emergency response to reports of a collision between a tanker and cargo vessel off the coast of East Yorkshire. The alarm was raised at 9:48 a.m, so just before 10 a.m. this morning. A Coast Guard rescue helicopter from Humberside was called alongside lifeboats from Skegness, Bridlington, Maplethorpe and Cleethorpes, an HM Coast Guard fixed-wing aircraft and nearby vessels with firefighting capability are also being dispatched to the scene. Now, we've also just received some audio that we can bring to you. This is a message from the Coast Guard to all shipping in the area, giving the coordinates first of all, and then highlighting just what has gone on with this collision. Take a listen to this.
53 degrees, 44.20 minutes north, I say again, 53 degrees, 44.20 minutes north, 000 degrees, 23.75 minutes east. So Long has collided with tanker Stena Immaculate in the outer anchorage. Both vessels are abandoning. Vessels who have firefighting equipment or who can assist with search and rescue, contact Humber Coast Guard on channel 16. Vessel Stena Immaculate is carrying Jet A1 fuel, which is on fire and in the water. Request vessels remain at a safe distance. Humber Coast Guard coordinating, date time group 101000 UTC. This is Humber Coast Guard.
So you could hear there from the Coast Guard the very significant and serious situation that is unfolding there, with both these vessels being abandoned by their crews, fire that's being reported in the water as well. And this oil tanker, the MV Stena Immaculate, was carrying aviation fuel, effectively. Aviation fuel which is clearly on fire, affecting the ship and affecting the sea around the ship. That will make the operation to try to get those crew members from both ships to safety that bit more difficult, of course. Ships will be, depending on where that fire is, if it's on both sides surrounding the ship, we just don't know at this stage, but that may make it very difficult for other vessels to approach the stricken vessels with a view to getting the crew on board both these vessels off, and that's why, of course, you've got a Coast Guard helicopter responding as well. It may be at the end of the day that some of those crew members have to be winched off. Now, as I say, this incident is unfolding in the Humber estuary, so not that far off land, and of course people in the area around Hull, I'm sure, looking out to sea, will be able to see the smoke and perhaps the flames from this incident unfolding. But a very significant air and sea rescue that is underway now in the Humber estuary. We just have to hope that all of those on board these two stricken vessels have been able to abandon ship safely.
I was just going to say, Mark, do we have any information at all about the crews and whether any fatalities or people being taken to hospital? Do we know what the situation is yet?
No, it's far too early for that. The incident is still an ongoing air and sea rescue that is underway at the moment. All we know from, as you heard from that Coast Guard radio transmission there, are both crews in the process of abandoning ship. And that might take some considerable time, depending on how badly, for instance, the oil tanker is affected by fire, whether these crews, where they can go to the muster stations, whether they can deploy their own lifeboats to get off the vessel, or whether they actually have to be winched off, as I say, by that Coast Guard helicopter. So too early to say as yet how many crew on both vessels and how many, if any, have been injured or otherwise at this stage.
Gosh. And of course, I assume it's far too early to say how this incident happened, but one would assume that modern ships have very good early warning systems. It's broad daylight, so that will be very important to find out how that happened.
Yeah, and very rare. Mark White, thank you very much. We will be bringing you up to date on, as I said, that breaking story, as you just heard from Mark White. It is ongoing, but we will have all the details as and when they happen. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. It's Commonwealth Day, and we'll bring you the latest pomp and pageantry from Westminster Abbey. After your headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. 33 minutes past midday. The top story, as we were just hearing, a major rescue operation is underway off the coast of East Yorkshire after a cargo vessel and an oil tanker have collided in the North Sea near Hull. The tanker is now on fire and lifeboats, firefighting teams and a Coast Guard rescue helicopter are at the scene. A fixed-wing aircraft and nearby vessels with firefighting capabilities have also been deployed. The alarm was raised at just before 10 to 10 this morning, and the incident remains ongoing. The family of Sir David Amess has slammed the Home Secretary for rejecting a public inquiry into his murder, calling it unacceptable and insulting. Yvette Cooper says it's hard to see how an inquiry would go beyond the trial of the terrorist Ali Harbi Ali and a recent Prevent review. The attacker, an Islamic State fanatic, was referred to Prevent years before stabbing the veteran MP to death in 2021. Sir David's widow is urging the Prime Minister to reconsider ahead of a meeting with him on Wednesday. Well, Sir David's daughter Katie says the response is adding salt to an open wound and accused the government of brushing the family aside.
The Home Secretary has written to us ahead of our meeting to let us know that we will not be getting the public inquiry that we have been demanding. This decision is an absolute insult and a betrayal to my family and our father's memory.
And a man in his 30s has been arrested for entering the UK without permission. He is believed to be Palestinian asylum seeker Abu Wadi, who allegedly arrived on a migrant boat before posting extremist content online. It comes on now the 10th day in a row that more small boats have reached UK waters. 150 migrants arrived this morning, taking the total since March to over 2,200. The government says it is cracking down on small boat crossings, though, and strengthening border security with new police and immigration powers. Ministers also say the border security bill will help remove those with no legal right to stay as part of a £150 million plan to toughen enforcement. That's the news on GB News. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at 1 o'clock with the lunchtime news, and Dawn and Miriam will be straight back with you after this.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Perth and Kinross, the A9 is partly blocked northbound by a fallen tree after the A924 at Pitlochry. Buses replaced trains between Stranraer and Ayr because of a signalling problem. The M65 in Lancashire is blocked each way for an investigation between junctions 2 and 3 between the M61 and Blackburn West, causing queues. The M62 in East Yorkshire, 2 lanes are closed eastbound after an accident between junctions 37 and 38 from Howden to North Cave. The M69 in Leicestershire is closed northbound from junction 1. The A5 Hinckley and Nuneaton turned to the M1 near Leicester for an investigation. In Cambridgeshire, the A142 is closed in both directions at Meeple after an accident. And in London, the Blackwall Tunnel's closed southbound for repairs after an accident, with queues on the A12 from Bow and the A13 back beyond Canning Town.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain, and King Charles will mark Commonwealth Day today with his annual address at Westminster Abbey later. Yeah, and today the King has teamed up with Apple Music to celebrate music from across the Commonwealth. Here's a taste of what you can expect.
Throughout my life, music has meant a great deal to me. It has that remarkable ability to bring happy memories.
And the marvellous Miriam has just confessed she can sing.
I don't
who wants to
go on
hear
air?
it?
No way.
Come on, oh, come on. Everybody's doing a brand new... Evidently, the King likes Kylie Minogue, and The Locomotion's one of his favourites. And you can sing it perfectly in the break.
Well, yes, I'm not doing it now. Sorry.
She's shy for me. She's gone shy for me. But maybe Adam Cherry can sing for us. He's live at Westminster Abbey. Come on, Adam, give us a chorus.
No, Adam Cherry cannot sing. Well done, Miriam. Fantastic work. I'm live outside Westminster Abbey. King and Queen will, of course, be arriving shortly alongside the Prince and Princess of Wales and the Prime Minister. King is calling for unity and peace. The theme for today is Together We Thrive. But I have to say, as the crowds gather behind me, there's a bit of a protest starting to gather to my left. These are, of course, Republican protesters. Signs saying "Not my king," "Down with the crown." They've built this enormous T-Rex. I suppose the motif is the monarchy is prehistoric. It's not quite Jurassic Park, but it's not half bad. As I say, things are going to kick off in a couple of hours' time, and we'll hear from the king shortly.
That's the irony is that whatever they say, he is their king of their British citizens. But anyway, this is a really, the Commonwealth is a really, really interesting institution because although it was founded, almost a century ago, its precursor anyway, it was founded along the lines of all the countries being equal partners, which a century ago was quite progressive, wasn't it?
Yeah, the whole thing's interesting because it's against the backdrop of the spat between Canada and the US and Donald Trump and the king basically being used as a tool of soft diplomatic power. That letter handed to President Trump to try and soothe him, build relationships. But of course, the King's today going to say that we're living in uncertain times. So are the White House, is the Trump administration going to be watching this and listening closely to see what he really says and see if he's really on side? Is he going to take Canada's side? They are, of course, a Commonwealth country. So, as I say, one to look out for later this afternoon.
The whole Canada thing, isn't it? I said, Adam, the Canada thing is very interesting. That story broke this morning with Mark Carney being the new president in charge of Canada. Him saying, no to America. So it'd be very interesting to see if Charles does get involved in this one.
Yeah, I mean, the monarchy is supposed to stay out of politics, but as I say, being used as a soft diplomatic tool in this way, it's a new frontier for the monarchy, certainly, compared to Queen Elizabeth. You're right, it is interesting, but he's calling for unity and peace. And as I said, uncertain times, but he's trying to move past that. And aside from some protests here, I think it's going to be a pretty fun day.
And I was reading this morning that there have been some new members to the Commonwealth recently who don't have any previous relationship with the British Empire. So they weren't former colonies, but they've seen the Commonwealth as an interesting international organisation, perhaps one that's less political than any of the geographically based blocks, and wants to be part of it. What does the Commonwealth have to offer small countries that want to join a bigger group?
Well, I mean, it's a good question. That's hopefully something that the King will touch on later today. We've seen some of his speech, but the full thing, maybe that will be part of the speech, part of that unity message that he's trying to deliver. I think it was really important, as I say, especially given the context of Canada's spat and the Trump administration trying to be wooed here in the next few months.
Adam, thank you very much. That's Adam Cherry, live outside Westminster Borough on Commonwealth Day.
Did you know that the British King or Queen is not automatically the head of the Commonwealth? They have to actually be elected. Now, so far, they always have been. It'd be a bit of a diplomatic incident if they weren't.
Who elects them? The Commonwealth countries?
Commonwealth heads of government, yeah. So it's very interesting. It doesn't have to be the British monarch.
Who else could it be?
Good question.
Who would you vote for? GBNews.com/your say. You know I was going to say that. Come on, who do you want as head of the Commonwealth?
I can see a poll of the day
Let's
coming up.
have some fun with this one.
Absolutely. Well, if you want to jet off to any of those Commonwealth countries, you might want some winter sun. Although, in fact, I don't think any European countries are in the Commonwealth, are they, apart from Britain?
Not yet, but here's their chance, and here's your chance to find out where it's going to be hot and sunny for you.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Well, it's actually rather unsettled across much of Europe with heavy rain and thunderstorm. This is all to do with an area of low pressure, so bringing spells of rain and some heavy and frequent downpours across much of Spain and into Italy. The best of the sunshine will be towards the far, far east across parts of Greece. Temperatures here not doing too bad at around 18 or 19 degrees. And we hold on to some heavy showers through the week as well. Temperatures up to 20 degrees.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Oh, hello. Sorry, we were having a gossip.
We are discussing the weather.
We were discussing the weather. Yes, we were, at least legitimately discussing the weather. Oh, come on. It's a Monday afternoon. This is indeed Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. And there's loads more coming up on today's show.
And, of course, we'll also have the latest on that breaking news story that a tanker and a cargo vessel have collided in the North Sea. We'll be bringing you the latest pictures shortly.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. There will be some showers, a bit of rain for some of us today, also some sunshine breaking through, but I think the big talking point will be the drop in temperatures. There is a cold front lying across Scotland through today, and behind it, to the north of this, there is some colder air coming through, so temperatures will be dropping through the next 24 hours. But through today, some showers across parts of Scotland, some of these falling as sleet or snow over the higher ground, something a bit brighter across central parts once that stubborn fog across North Sea coastal areas clears away. Meanwhile, in the south, particularly towards the west, it's quite cloudy with some outbreaks of rain. Still pretty mild towards the south, temperatures low to mid-teens here, but further north, chillier than it has been through some recent days because of that colder air that I mentioned coming through. Now, as we go through into this evening, still some showers across parts of Scotland, and there's still the potential for some sleet or snow over the highest ground. Further west, though, a greater chance of staying largely dry, where you're sheltered from that northerly wind. Across Northern Ireland, mostly dry through this evening, but a bit of cloud here. Also quite a lot of cloud across many parts of England and Wales, and towards the southwest, across parts of South Wales and into southwestern England, the cloud will be thick enough for some outbreaks of rain, and that rain could continue, could even pep up a little bit as we go overnight and through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Further north, there will be some clear skies developing, particularly across some parts of southern Scotland, northern England, maybe Northern Ireland, and here we are going to see temperatures dropping lower than they have done through some recent nights, and so a touch of frost, even a few icy patches possible first thing tomorrow morning. Otherwise, through tomorrow, the cloud, the outbreaks of rain in the southwest quickly clear away, and then for many it's actually looking largely dry, some decent bright weather, though we do have a northerly wind, and on that northerly wind there will be a scattering of showers coming down, and again these could be a bit wintry at times over the highest ground of Scotland. Notice for all, temperatures will be a little bit lower. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We're
proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello, welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain with Miriam and Dawn this afternoon. Now, we've got a packed show for you. We've got so many breaking news stories which we will bring you up to date with throughout the show. However, it is a Monday lunchtime. We thought you might need a little bit of food talk because we've all got to eat at some point, haven't we? So...
Indeed. So the owner of the UK's oldest Indian restaurant has said that American junk food chains are taking over the high streets.
Ranjit Mathrani, the founder of MWE, says the higher taxes and increased labour costs are playing into the hands of US fast food joints as they are better equipped to cope with these costs than smaller independent restaurants.
Of course, this comes as Rachel Reeves' budget, which raised both employer national insurance rates and the national minimum wage, has sparked fears of widespread restaurant closures due to the escalating operational and staffing costs.
So there is serious points to this story as well. Joining us now is body positivity activist George Keywood. George, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. George, you can't walk down the average British high street now without actually walking past scores of fast food shops. I mean, so this story, it's a serious story about how small British business are being driven out of business as well. But surely we need to do something about the American fast food industry taking over our high streets.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just getting ridiculous at this point. You know, there seems to be a McDonald's on every bloody high street and at every, you know, big industrial centre. It's just everywhere you go. Every corner you turn in the UK, there's a Subway, there's a McDonald's, there's a KFC. It's just all these big corporations, these big fast food giants. And the problem is, it's killing all of the local trade. You know, there's shops that are starting out with their new restaurants and they're just being killed straight away off the market because you got McDonald's there. You know, everybody knows McDonald's. Everybody's been to McDonald's for many years. So they just go with an easier, cheaper option and they don't support the local businesses that are trying to start out or have been there for a long time. You know, it's quite devastating really to see that and see how many local businesses are closing every day, every month because of this, you know, because they're just being done out of the competition basically. You know, they can't compete with, you know, big US corporations that have multi-millions to chuck at their new shops and their new businesses. You know, it's unfortunate really, and it's not giving much option because to be honest with you, I'm pretty bored of seeing the same thing on every high street, you know.
Yes, it is really noticeable how you can go to any British town and the high street pretty much looks the same, with the same chains, most of them American, as you say. Whereas you go to a high street, let's say in France, it's completely different, independents everywhere. And it seems to me that the main problem here is business rates that just keep going up and up and up because they're proportional to rents, which of course we know we've got a property crisis. But what is the answer to this? Is it just to scrap tax? Is it to be a bit more active? Should the government be a bit more activist in terms of actively discouraging foreign chains? What's the answer?
I think it's a really problematic answer, isn't it, really? Because, you know, at the same time with the US corporations, a lot of them are, you know, bringing in a lot of jobs for a lot of people, you know, so you've got to look at it from that point of view. But then again, when we look at this, we look at places like Amazon, you know, they're not paying any tax. And you think, hold on, why are you not paying as much tax as the local shop or whatever? So I think it's trying to make it fair for everybody. And I feel like the government, it's about time they started reinvesting into their own businesses within their own country rather than looking to give the US even more reason to come over here and completely take over, basically. I think it's really sad to see a lot of businesses failing to meet basic, you know, goals and achievements for their self and their family who live locally, and instead they're being completely knocked off the game by big corporations that have money to lose. And it is really sad. It is.
And Mr. Mathrani, who runs these 4 Indian restaurants, he's saying that he's going to be forced to cut 5% of his workforce, which is equivalent to 25 roles. Now, these are the working people the government promised they would be looking after when they're bringing us growth and change. People are losing their jobs already.
Yeah, I mean, you can't believe anything the government says, unfortunately. I mean, you know, we're told many things. We're told that, you know, businesses are going to, you know, get more funding and more help and support to be able to give people more opportunities and to provide more jobs for people. But unfortunately, it just never sees the light, does it? You know, there's so much said, but very little done. And unfortunately, that's the world that we're currently living in. And I think the government are too consumed with funding wars than funding their local residents that pay for these wars and pay for these governments to even be here. You know, they don't appreciate what people are doing every day. And we're here grinding to make money. Even me, I do TikTok shop. I lose 20% in VAT if I go over a threshold. But where's that VAT going? It's not going into anything to help me. You know, nobody helps me switch the lights on and start up every day. Nobody's supporting me in what I do with my career. I've got to keep doing it and keep making money and keep chucking it down the drain, unfortunately.
George, thank you very much for joining us. That's Body Positivity Activist George Keywood. This is Good Afternoon Britain with Miriam and Dawn. We have got so much more coming up. It's absolutely packed, so you don't really want to move a muscle unless you're going to use your local shop for a nice takeaway for lunch, maybe.
Indeed, and we'll be bringing you the latest on that boat collision off the Lincolnshire coast, so don't go anywhere.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Now, as we go into tomorrow, we are going to have a northerly wind pushing through. That's going to bring some showers and also a change to something markedly chillier for many of us. That northerly, colder air will be coming down behind a cold front, which is currently pushing its way southwards across the country. This front's brought a few showers, a bit more cloud for a time, but behind it, we do have some clearer skies across parts of Scotland. And actually further south, there's quite a bit of cloud developing through the night across central southern parts of England and Wales, and with that some outbreaks of rain, particularly towards the southwest. Where we do get the clear skies though, temperatures are going to drop quite a few degrees lower than some recent nights. A touch of frost possible first thing tomorrow morning, maybe even some icy patches. But in the south, a milder start to the day because of the cloud here, and there will be some outbreaks of rain around, particularly across parts of the southwest. Devon, Cornwall may be getting off to a bit of a damp start, but that will quickly clear away. Then actually across the rest of England, Wales and into Northern Ireland, a lot of bright weather to start the day, but across Scotland, although there will be some clear skies overnight, it's going to quickly turn cloudier through tomorrow morning, and with that we are going to have a scattering of showers pushing down on that northerly wind. Those showers could be a bit wintry at times, so some sleet or snow over the higher ground, and there could be some heavier showers, also some showers skirting around North Sea coastal parts, but elsewhere most areas having a generally dry day, albeit some sunny breaks, but quite a bit of cloud on offer. With that, temperatures are going to be lower than they have been recently, just about scraping into double figures at best, most places staying in single digits, so staying a bit chillier than it has been through some recent days. More showers to come as we go through the end of the day tomorrow. They are going to spread a bit further south, and still some sleet or snow possible over higher ground. Showers, that's the theme as we go through the rest of this week. Should turn drier by the weekend, but all the time staying a little bit chillier than of late.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We want to spruce up your spring with an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash that you can spend however you like. But that's not all, as you'll also receive not one, but two brand new designer watches and a fabulous Mulberry handbag. For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Jason, actually, who worked for William and Kate, came out, and he worked for them between 2015 and 2021, I think. He came out and actually said, no, these allegations are there, and the Duchess of Sussex has always denied any allegations of bullying.
Yeah.
But these were accusations that were levelled at her when she was over here at Buckingham Palace, and also, interestingly, we have seen last year in particular allegations of her bullying TV production staff in America. So now these are allegations. Meghan obviously denies everything, but it does make you wonder there's no smoke without fire to have those allegations. Certainly bullying young junior members of staff, reducing people to tears. In the UK and in America, you do have to wonder whether this is lots of people who have axes to grind or whether it's actually true.
You and I would have been brought up in similar working environments, and I look and I think I wouldn't even go here with Dawn Neeson, because what we were used to, and I'm not saying subjected to, because everybody got it. There were loud voices, there was threatening behaviour. I had telephones thrown at me, cups thrown at me. I had a typewriter thrown at my feet, an Adler typewriter. And that was, what's wrong with this script? I don't know.
What was this, telly bosses?
Yeah.
Most of the bosses I work for were basically psychopaths.
Yeah. Well, look,
it made them more driven.
I don't feel wounded or harmed by it, but what I do realise is that you can never replicate, you can never in any way say to anyone, what the heck are you doing? Because you're aggressive to it. Although I don't see it as aggressive, but just you need to point out to people where they're doing things wrong. So I don't know how, in this day and age, you actually get people back on the right track or not.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Monday, the 10th of March, and I'm Miriam Cates.
And I'm Dawn Neeson.
Well, an oil tanker and a cargo ship have collided off the coast of East Yorkshire. Reports are now emerging that both vessels are on fire, and there are also reports that a number of people have been abandoned on both vessels. Could be a very serious situation. We will have the latest for you, and we'll bring you pictures as soon as we get them.
Yeah, shocking scenes you can see on your screen just now. And what happened to my father should never have happened, says Katie Amess. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper rejects calls for a public inquiry into the death of her father, Sir David Amess. She described the decision as an absolute insult and betrayal to her family. We'll have the latest after that heartbreaking statement just a short while ago.
And some more breaking news in the last hour. The Home Office has confirmed that the anti-Semitic Palestinian asylum seeker Abu Wadeh, who crossed the Channel last week, has been arrested. And this news comes as at least 150 migrants have crossed the Channel illegally this morning in an unprecedented 10th straight day of small boat crossings. It takes the total who've crossed since the 1st of March to more than 2,200. We'll be getting the latest with our Home and Security editor.
So thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. As you've spotted, probably, it's Miriam and Dawn with you this afternoon. The lovely Tom and Emily are both off on holiday. Not together. That would be a very wrong rumour to start, but they are both away, so you've got us two this afternoon. But it's not about us, it's about you and your comments and your thoughts on all the stories we're discussing or anything you want to talk about. gbnews.com/your say is the way to get involved in the conversation, and we will be bringing you all the latest on that breaking story about the boat collision in the North Sea. Well, let's get the news headlines first, though, with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just after 1:30. No, in fact, it's just gone 1 o'clock. The top story from the newsroom this hour: a major rescue operation is underway off the coast of East Yorkshire after a cargo vessel and an oil tanker collided in the North Sea. The tanker is now on fire, and lifeboats, firefighting teams and a Coast Guard rescue helicopter are also at the scene. An aircraft and nearby vessels with firefighting capabilities have also been deployed, with the RNLI saying it's received reports that some crew members abandoned their vessels. The alarm was raised at 9:48 a.m. this morning, and the incident remains ongoing. The family of Sir David Amess has slammed the Home Secretary for rejecting a public inquiry into his murder, calling it unacceptable and insulting. Yvette Cooper says it's hard to see, though, how an inquiry would go beyond the trial of terrorist Ali Harbi Ali and a recent Prevent review. The attacker, an Islamic State fanatic, was referred to Prevent years before stabbing the MP to death in 2021. Sir David's widow is now urging the Prime Minister to reconsider the inquiry. And Sir David's daughter Katie said earlier that the response just adds salt to an open wound and accused the government of brushing the family aside.
The Home Secretary has written to us ahead of our meeting to let us know that we will not be getting the public inquiry that we have been demanding. This decision is an absolute insult and a betrayal to my family and our father's memory.
A man in his 30s has been arrested for entering the UK without permission. He is believed to be Palestinian asylum seeker Abu Wadi, who allegedly arrived on a migrant boat before posting extremist content online. It comes on the 10th day now in a row that more small boats have reached UK waters. 150 migrants arrived just this morning, taking the total since the 1st of March to over 2,200. The government says it is cracking down on small boat crossings and strengthening border security with new police and immigration powers. Since the election, more than 2,500 foreign criminals have been deported. That is a 23% rise on last year. 2 British diplomats are being expelled from Russia, accused of espionage in what's seen as the latest tit-for-tat move. Moscow says the pair carried out intelligence work and must leave within 2 weeks. It follows the UK's expulsion of a Russian diplomat last month, part of an ongoing diplomatic standoff. And Mark Carney says Canada will never, ever be part of the United States after winning the race to succeed Justin Trudeau as the country's Prime Minister.
Canada never, ever will be part of America in any way, shape or form.
Well, the former Bank of England governor's vowing to take on Donald Trump in a growing trade war and says Canada will impose retaliatory tariffs until, he says, Americans show Canada respect. Carney, who has never been elected to office, has won 86% of the vote and is expected to call a general election soon. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you shortly. Now, though, it's over to Miriam and Dawn.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sam. Right, let's start with that breaking news now that the Coast Guard is responding to reports of a collision between a tanker and a cargo vessel off England's northeastern coast. Let's get the latest with our Home and Security Editor, Mark White.
Mark, the 2 vessels involved the MV Stena Immaculate and the MV Salong are the 2 vessels at the centre of this very dramatic air-sea rescue that is underway now in the Humber estuary. This incident unfolded just before 10 o'clock this morning. You can see from the video there just how very significant this is. Still images as well. That's showing the cargo vessel and the oil tanker on fire there. You can see some of the pallets that the container was carrying that have been gutted by that fire, and 2 on the video, 2 very separate seats of fire there on both vessels, with also fuel that's in the water there and burning, and that of course makes the process of trying to abandon these vessels that bit more difficult because of the fact that you've got fire in the water and perhaps only a small number of areas where you can get vessels in close enough to rescue those on board. We received a little earlier a Coast Guard audio message that was sent out to shipping in that area, asking for the assistance in particular of firefighting capable vessels in the area to go there. Let's have a listen to that. You hear the coordinates given first and then a description of what's been going on.
53 degrees 44.20 minutes north. I say again, 53 degrees 44.20 0.20 minutes north, 000 degrees 23.75 minutes east. So Long has collided with tanker Stena Immaculate in the outer anchorage. Both vessels are abandoning. Vessels who have firefighting equipment or who can assist with search and rescue, contact Humber Coast Guard on channel 16. Vessel Stena Immaculate is carrying Jet A1 fuel, which is on fire and in the water. Request vessels remain at a safe distance. Humber Coast Guard coordinating, date time group 101000 UTC. This is Humber Coast Guard.
So you could hear the Coast Guard saying that oil tanker, the MV Stena Immaculate, was carrying aviation fuel, and that's what has ignited here in the tanks of this oil tanker, now spilling out and also affecting the cargo ship as well, with very serious fire damage to that cargo vessel MV Ceylon. Now we can tell you that the MV Stena Immaculate, the oil tanker, had been coming from Greece and heading towards Humberside. It had anchored in the outer estuary there, the Humber estuary. It was anchored at the time. And looking at marine traffic, that sort of app that you can get that gives you the sort of the shipping movements, it shows the MV Ceylon running at about 16 knots, which is close to 20 miles an hour, which for a merchant vessel out there at sea is very fast. And the marine traffic tracker shows that vessel MV Ceylon going straight for the oil tanker, smashing into it without slowing down, smashing into that oil tanker side on at 16 knots. And that clearly has done massive damage to both vessels. And of course it raises the questions on why on earth those in the wheelhouse of the MV Ceylon weren't aware that they were approaching this other vessel, and why they didn't take evasive actions. We know, of course, from past accidents, occasionally you can get the likes of sort of steering issues that can affect the hydraulics, that can mean that a crew can't take that kind of evasive action in time. But it doesn't appear to have taken any evasive action, was going a very high rate of knots when it smashed into the side of this oil tanker at anchor.
Mark, just one quick question for you. I'm seeing reports that the vessel's crew have been transferred to lifeboats. Is there any update on that?
Well, we know that the crew of both vessels have abandoned ship. That happened early on in this incident, and there were, of course, those 4 lifeboats along with other local vessels that rushed to the scene. And as yet, we've had no reports of any casualties or any crew members missing. So we are hoping and assuming that they have managed to get off the vessels and onto the lifeboats and other merchant shipping in the area.
Indeed, pretty dramatic pictures. Mark White, thank you very much. Mark will have a full update on that breaking story throughout the show for you, so we'll be coming back to that story. Now, moving on to one of the other of the major headlines today. What happened to my father should never, ever have happened. That's what Katie Amess said, as the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has rejected calls for a public inquiry into the death of her father, Sir David Amess.
She described the decision as an absolute insult and betrayal to her family during a truly heartbreaking statement just a while ago. Have a listen.
Losing my father has stolen so much from us. In the weeks before his murder, he was helping me to plan my wedding, a day he had looked forward to more than anything. It was his absolute dream to walk one of his children down the aisle at the crypt at the Houses of Parliament, and we were just 6 weeks away from that dream. He had planned everything, from the flowers to the music. He had even planned a surprise photo shoot where my husband was going to wear the same suit that my dad had worn to marry my mum all those years before.
Well, our national reporter, Charlie Peters, was in the room for that statement, and he joins us now. Charlie, Katie Amess has been a brave and tireless campaigner seeking an inquiry for a long, long time now. The last government refused it. Now this government has refused it. What's the latest?
Well, the government letter was sent to Katie Amess and her mother on Thursday, but details were released about 20 minutes before the start of that highly emotional press conference. Since the murder of Sir David Amess in October 2021 by an Islamist fanatic, there has been a criminal trial, of course, which led to a sentencing at the Old Bailey. There's been a Prevent learning review, which found that he'd been assessed by Prevent 7 times before the attack, and also there was a coroner's report. And Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, has said in that letter that the report found that there were no further questions to answer. That has, it seems, been a central part of their rejection of the Amess family's demand for a full public inquiry. And in that emotional press conference, Katie Amess said that she wakes up every day hoping that this is just a nightmare. She said that she was receiving therapy, taking medication, but still feels scared to be alone, feels unsafe when she goes outside. She also spoke on behalf of her mother, Lady Amess, who outlined why the family believes there should be a full national inquiry.
We have spent the last 3 years trying to grieve, but being unable to. Although we can take some small comfort from the fact that his killer will never be released, we feel that from the start we have been denied access to the truth about what led to David's entirely preventable murder. When David was taken from us, we believed, like any family would, that there would be a full and thorough investigation into how and why this was allowed to happen. We trusted that the government would do everything in their power to examine the failures that led to his death and to ensure that no other family endures the pain that we have suffered. Yet despite our repeated calls, we have been denied the one thing that can provide us real answers: a full public inquiry.
Now, Katie Amess said that she was filled with burning anger and a desire for justice. She said that the murder of her father was an attack on democracy that had been watered down and brushed under the carpet. She referred to the public inquiries launched into the Nottingham and Southport tragedies, and she asked, is the life of my father worth less than the lives of those who were killed and murdered in those horrendous attacks? And GB News asked the family and their representative if they thought that the government rejecting a call for a public inquiry into the murder of Sir David Amess would be a benefit to terrorists in the United Kingdom.
What message do you think that Yvette Cooper's letter sends to those who want to target MPs? And if, as you say, the government does not want to learn lessons from this incident, and beyond that also, have you heard recent concerns from other MPs about their safety ahead of this letter being released, and how recent has that concern been?
Thank you, Charlie. I think that's a very important question, because if I were in my bedroom on Google self-radicalizing, and I saw this government's approach to the Prevent program in general, as well as this murder, I think I'd be licking my lips, because I'm learning that they're not really going to do anything other than try to rehabilitate me or re-educate me. There's no mention in Prevent of the term public safety. And I had thought that Prevent meant they would prevent Sir David's murder. They would take the guy off the street. It doesn't mean that at all.
Well, it was a stark statement there from the family representative, saying that terrorists or would-be murderers of MPs would be licking their lips at the government's reaction, he said, referring to Prevent not taking sufficient action to take those at risk of extremism and violence off the streets. Well, in response, we have had a statement from Dan Jarvis, the Security Minister, who has said that the murder of Sir David Amess was a terrible tragedy, and our heartfelt thoughts continue to be with his family and friends. In the years since this cowardly attack, there have been several reviews asking how this could have been avoided, and we have seen significant improvements to the Prevent programme, as well as stronger protections for MPs. We understand that the Amess family are still looking for answers, and we take this incredibly seriously. While we do not think a public inquiry would unearth any information that has not already been assessed, the Home Secretary has confirmed that we will further scrutinise all the reviews that have taken place over the last few years. We very much hope this will help the family to get the justice they deserve. Well, the family will go to Downing Street and meet with the Prime Minister on Wednesday, where we expect that they will reaffirm their desire for a full public inquiry into the murder of Sir David Amess.
Well, Charlie Peters, our national report, thank you so much for that report. Well, joining us now to discuss this further is terror and radicalisation expert Anthony Glees. Anthony, thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is a tragic case, and Katie Amess has been a very, very brave campaigner, but ultimately we are no closer now to finding out any more about this tragic murder, a murder that was actually a threat to democracy, not just a personal tragedy.
Well, I certainly don't think that this can be the end of the matter. I mean, it's good that the Home Office and the counter-terrorist police have published what they have published, but I don't think it's enough. I'm a bit sceptical about a major public review because they can go on for years, and I think this problem is far too urgent. There needs to be public confidence in Prevent. There's a lot of evidence that Prevent is not doing what it says on the packet, and that means there needs to be some kind of public investigation into the failures of Prevent, and it also needs to go into granular detail, because this isn't just about an MP, about his business at a surgery. It's also about the fact that the report shows a very specific mistake was made at a late stage. So this was somebody who'd already gone to the channel stage. In other words, school did a marvellous job, said, look, this is a really dangerous guy. He went to the channel, and there a particular individual signed him off. Now, I think we need to know more about who that individual was and why he signed him off in 2016, and then he went on to commit this awful killing. It's not the only time Prevent has failed, but usually Prevent has failed at the initial stage, as in the case of Rudy Cabana. This is more serious because somebody who was seriously dangerous was identified, but somebody that they call an intervention provider, goodness knows who that was, took a decision. That decision turned out to be a fatal one.
Anthony, how many times are we going to hear this? I'm just reading out one of our viewers today, Gillian. Gillian says, Prevent should be disbanded immediately in disgrace. They aid and abet evil. Sir William Shawcross, who reviewed how Prevent operated, said they are leaving the public at risk. Southport, Nottingham, Westminster Bridge, London bombing, Manchester Arena. Prevent are aware of many of the people involved in these cases. It keeps happening. What needs to be done now? Not an inquiry that goes on for years, as you said. What needs to be done right now?
Well, I don't think it's a good idea to get rid of Prevent. We need something like that. There were 60,000 people referred to Prevent in the past 12 months. If you get rid of it, there's nothing at all. But I do think we need to take a look at who are providing the so-called expert judgments on very dangerous people. And the situation is going to get worse. Just look at what's happening in Syria at the moment. There are going to be more Islamists coming to Europe and coming to the UK. So we need to have a look at how we really do prevent these people, and whatever we've been doing so far has not been enough. And you know, that terrible interview we saw, the sadness of the Amess family. This is very raw and very personal for them, and that's not acceptable to one of our elected representatives. We take democracy seriously in this country, and that means keeping our MPs safe, whatever it takes.
And Anthony, finally, just very quickly, we keep coming back to this problem about people coming into this country. This weekend we saw someone who declared he wants to kill all Jews coming into the country. The Home Office, we think, have arrested him now, but it's, you know, he was wandering around
around. We keep coming back to the public being put at risk by the very people who are meant to be protecting us.
Well, I think that's right, and it is about our sovereignty. Now, we're very concerned about what's going on in Ukraine and Russia not respecting, and indeed Trump not respecting the sovereignty of Ukraine. We need to respect our own sovereignty in this country, and as I've said many times before, asylum seekers now coming across the channel should not be met by lifeboats. They should be met by warships and taken back to France. That's a very clear lesson. We do need to tighten the screws on here, because it is certainly going to get worse.
Anthony Glees, thank you very much for joining us. Anthony Glees there. I mean, he's absolutely right, isn't he, Dawn? If 60,000 people are referred to Prevent, even if they were doing a good job, you're still looking for a needle in a haystack.
Absolutely. Very, very strong words. What do you think? Do you agree with Anthony? We've just heard gbnews.com/your say. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. There's loads more coming up on today's absolutely packed show with live breaking news. An oil tanker and cargo ship have collided off the coast of East Yorkshire. Both vessels are on fire, and we could be dealing with a very serious situation. We'll have all the latest on that as we get it.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
An advert for clothing retailer Next has been banned after it's judged to feature an unhealthily thin model.
Well, the advert, which was a product listing for denim leggings on the retailer's website, was deemed irresponsible by the Advertising Standards Authority after a single viewer complained.
A single viewer, OK. In its defence, Next said the ad was created with a strong sense of responsibility to both consumers and society, and while admitting the model was slim, they added that she had a healthy and toned physique that aligned with the nature of its product, its leggings.
Well, is it irresponsible to feature slim models in adverts? Let's debate this now. We're joined by the showbiz broadcaster and body positivity advocate Danielle Broadbent and the journalist and broadcaster Emma Trimble. Danielle, let's start from you. Did the Advertising Standards Authority get this one right?
Absolutely. I mean, loads and loads of brands sell leggings and they don't need to feature a super slim model to sell their clothing and their leggings. Now, from my point of view, the ASA are not saying that this woman is unhealthy. They're saying the way she's being styled and the way she's posing looks unhealthy. And with such a trend going on at the moment with curvy plus size models in the fashion weeks, the trends of weight loss pens and things that are going around, are we encouraging, when we see adverts like this, vulnerable young teenage girls who are quite vulnerable anyway with body image? Are we encouraging eating disorders?
I think the idea that society is somehow, holding up anorexia as a virtue is just an anachronism. This woman is healthy. She's being body shamed for being healthy. I think people really just need to, and I know this sounds harsh, but I think they just need to get over themselves. It's this kind of scrutiny that is actually leading to people being so fixated on the way that people look.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain with Miriam and Dawn. And lots of you getting in touch, by the way. I just want to read one out saying that Anthony Glees, the last person we interviewed about Prevent not working, he should be Prime Minister. Lots of you agreeing with that one as well. Any case, yeah, no, he was very good and spoke a lot of what you're agreeing. So, but talking of politics, let's go to our political editor, Chris Hope now, who's just been in a meeting with Prime Minister's spokesperson. Chris, what have we learned today?
Hello both, welcome to College Green here outside the House of Parliament. We've learnt that the arrest of Abu Wadeh, the government confirms that has happened. They say that they rigorously pursue the deportation of anyone threatening our national interest. They are looking at deportation of people like this individual, and they could be detained in an appropriately secure accommodation until that happens. They won't comment on individuals, but they say this kind of example of people crossing here illegally, they will aggressively pursue that. Now, we asked 2,200 people have arrived here illegally in 10 days. Isn't your policy failing? They say it'll take time to get these numbers down. They say removals are up 21%, returns at the highest level. Illegal working raids are taking place. New legislation this week will give enforcement bodies counter-terror powers to crack down on illegal migration, but still the numbers are huge. And that idea, the Rwanda plan, pushed by the last Tory government, that's been dropped. On the issue of the David Amess public inquiry, you heard there from Charlie Peters so eloquently. They're saying the government recognises there are issues with Prevent, post the Southport attacks. A speed review has taken place there, but they understand that is not enough for the family. But it looks like no further reassurance for them. And on US tariffs on British steel and aluminium due to come in on Wednesday, the government remains prepared to defend the UK national interest when required to do so. So a lot moving here in Westminster.
It's all very well the government saying that they've increased deportation efforts, and I'm sure everybody would support that. But of course, what's been in the news over the last couple of months is the number of times the Home Office have tried to deport people, but those deportations have been rejected at appeal by judges who've picked out obscure pieces of human rights law to prevent people from being deported for extraordinary reasons. Of course, the chicken nugget case and all these other things. What is the government's comment on this? How are they going to stop the ECHR being weaponised by people who need to be deported? If they can't do that, what hope have they got of solving the problem?
I'm not sure they can. They are trying to do their best, but those repeated stories about the chicken nuggets, his son liked the flavour of UK chicken nuggets, not the ones he was being forced to go and eat in Albania, where he'd been deported there. Yeah, this is causing huge issues. It's an issue also, by the way, in Italy. They've got an offshore processing scheme in Albania. That's now been had to put on pause because of a ruling by European judges. I think this issue has not gone away, and that's why parties like Reform and increasingly the Tory party are going towards ECHR or full withdrawal from the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, to give back sovereignty to the building behind me, Parliament. But these issues have not gone away. They are trying to get numbers going. I think, to be fair to the Labour government, there was a real focus, I think, on Rwanda, and that meant there was a lot more people in hotels as the Rwanda plan was trying to get off the ground. That hasn't worked. So, to an extent, they are trying to clear up that big backlog. But the problems, this fundamental problems of getting people out of this country, still remain, Miriam.
Oh. Christopher Hope, thank you very much for that update. Do you ever get sick, former Conservative MP, of people going, all your fault, you didn't do anything for 14 years?
Well, I do, particularly because I was one of just 12 Conservative MPs who rebelled on that Rwanda bill because it didn't bring us out of having to follow the ECHR rules. So we, some of us did try.
You did do your bit.
Unfortunately, we weren't successful.
This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's loads more coming up. On today's Pack Show, an oil tanker and cargo ship have collided off the coast of East Yorkshire. Both vessels are on fire, and we could be dealing with a very serious situation. We'll have the latest on that breaking story after the headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. 31 minutes past 1. The top story this lunchtime, a major rescue operation is underway off the coast of East Yorkshire after a cargo vessel and an oil tanker collided in the North Sea near Hull. The tanker is on fire and lifeboats, firefighting teams and a Coast Guard rescue helicopter are at the scene. An aircraft and nearby vessels with firefighting capabilities have also been deployed, and the RNLI says it's received reports that some crew members abandoned their vessels. The alarm was raised just before 10 to 10 this morning, and the incident remains ongoing. The family of Sir David Amess has slammed the Home Secretary for rejecting a public inquiry into his murder, calling it unacceptable and insulting. Yvette Cooper says it's hard to see, though, how an inquiry would go beyond the trial of terrorist Ali Harbi Ali and a recent Prevent review. The attacker, an Islamic State fanatic, was referred to Prevent years before stabbing the MP in 2021. Sir David's widow is now urging the Prime Minister to reconsider the possibility of an inquiry. And his daughter Katie said earlier that the response just adds salt to an opened wound and accused the government of brushing the family aside.
The Home Secretary has written to us ahead of our meeting to let us know that we will not be getting the public inquiry that we have been demanding. This decision is an absolute insult and a betrayal to my family and our father's memory.
And a man in his 30s has been arrested for entering the UK without permission. He is believed to be Palestinian asylum seeker Abu Wadi, who allegedly arrived on a migrant boat before posting extremist content online. It comes on the 10th day now in a row that more small boats have reached the UK's waters. 150 migrants arrived just this morning, taking the total since the 1st of March to now over 2,200 people. The government says, though, it is cracking down on small boat crossings and strengthening border security with new police and immigration powers. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. Dawn and Miriam will be back with you very shortly.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. In Perth and Kinross, the A9 is partly blocked northbound by a fallen tree after the A924 at Pit Lockery. ScotRail train services are suspended between Stranraer and Girvan because of a signalling problem. In Derbyshire, the A38 is blocked by an accident at Watshorn Island and Alfreton, causing queues. The M69 in Leicestershire is closed northbound from Junction 1 to the A5 near Hinckley and Nuneaton to the M1 near Leicester for an investigation, causing delays. In Cambridgeshire, the A142 is closed each way at Meeple after an accident, and there are a couple of problems in London. Firstly, Tower Bridge is closed in both directions for an investigation. There are long delays on approaches to there, and the Blackwall Tunnel is closed southbound for emergency repairs after an accident earlier, causing queues back along the A12 and A13 towards there.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here with an exclusive opportunity just for you, our incredible GB News viewers. We're giving you the opportunity to win a VIP studio tour right here at GB News HQ. Plus, you'll also get to meet yours truly. It's easy to enter, just head to gbnews.com/community competition and follow the easy steps. Don't miss out, enter now, and I'll see you soon at GB News. Full T's and C's apply. Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here with an exclusive opportunity just for you, our incredible GB News viewers. We're giving you the opportunity to win a VIP studio tour right here at GB News HQ. Plus, you'll also get to meet yours truly. It's easy to enter, just head to gbnews.com/community competition and follow the easy steps. Don't miss out, enter now, and I'll see you soon at GB News. Full T's and C's apply.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Welcome back, and let's start with that breaking news now that the Coast Guard is responding to reports of a collision between a tanker and a cargo vessel off England's northeastern coast. Let's get the latest with our Home and Security editor, Mark White. Mark.
Well, the latest that we're hearing is that some 30 casualties, they're being termed, have been brought ashore to Grimsby by a number of different vessels. We can show you the latest images, latest video from the scene where you can see the vessels on fire out there in the Humber estuary. 2 vessels, an oil tanker, the MV Immaculate, and a cargo vessel, the MV Ceylon. Both vessels on fire and extremely badly damaged. This statement comes from Martin Boyers, Chief Executive of the Port of Grimsby East. He said initially 13 casualties were brought in on a Windcat 33 vessel, followed by another 10 on a harbour pilot boat. Now, he's also just said that a further 9 casualties, he's described them as, have been brought to Grimsby as well. But there are, he said, still people that are unaccounted for. He said that there was a massive fireball that resulted from this collision, which is clearly very ominous and worrying news indeed, because there would have been dozens of crew members on both vessels, at least 40 odd, the combined crew of both of these vessels. So we are hearing now 32 people, casualties have been described as that have been brought ashore, but their conditions are not yet known. But clearly that is of concern to hear them described as casualties and not survivors at this stage. They will, of course, be triaged, assessed by medics in Grimsby before then being transferred, if required, onwards to hospital. But a very serious situation that unfolded a couple of hours. It's still ongoing with both these vessels ablaze, and indeed the sea around these vessels full of burning aviation fuel, we're told. Ships in the area being told to keep a safe distance away from these 2 vessels as the search and rescue, of course, continues, looking for any other crew members, any survivors that might at this stage still be unaccounted for.
It's the most horrific story, and the reason it's such a horrific story is it's so unusual. This happened in very good conditions at sea. One of the boats, we understand, was moored there. It is incredibly unusual, isn't it? Are we getting any more information from the Coast Guard about potentially what went wrong? Was there a catastrophic incident in the bridge of the ship that hit the other one?
Well, with modern technology, there are all these amazing sort of apps that you can download, and marine traffic, which we were just catching a glimpse of there, has been very useful for us because we were able to see on that marine traffic app that this oil tanker, the MV Immaculate, was at anchor in the outer anchorage of the Humber estuary, but the other motor vessel, the cargo ship MV Ceylon, was heading straight towards this oil tanker side on at 60 knots, which is close to 20 miles an hour. For a merchant vessel, it's doing a significant speed there, and there's no indication, according to the marine trafficker app, that the vessel either slowed down or took any kind of made any effort to sort of maneuver away. Perhaps it wasn't able to because of some kind of hydraulic issue. We don't know at this stage. But hitting that vessel as it did at such a high rate of knots, that is probably why we're getting these reports now from officials in that area of a massive fireball at the time of the collision between the 2 vessels. And clearly, if there were any crew in the immediate areas affected by that explosion, then that is very worrying indeed.
Mark, I understand that ships have autopilot controls in the same way that planes do, but clearly you would expect there to be somebody manually paying watch, if you see what I mean, and especially as it's broad daylight. Are there any indications that there were any calls for help, or that anybody tried to warn the ship, the Coast Guard tried to warn the ship, or did this happen just completely out of the blue and nobody was aware of it until it happened?
Well, in terms of a big ship, like a cargo ship, like the MV Ceylon, it obviously has a big bridge which would have been manned. It's manned 24 hours a day with the bridge watch officer and other crew potentially, depending on what they might have been doing at that time on the bridge as well. So they would, especially in busy shipping lanes, in areas around a coastline when there is anchorage around that coastline, when there are other vessels in what can often be very busy shipping lanes, you would never have a bridge that is abandoned and not, that didn't have someone in charge monitoring the onward passage of that vessel. That makes what has happened all the more puzzling, and it might point to some kind of catastrophic mechanical failure on board the MV Ceylon that prevented the officers on the bridge from steering the vessel away from that tanker. But very, very worrying indeed, the fact that it was travelling still at such a high speed, didn't appear to manoeuvre away from the tanker as it collided with its side on.
Obviously, the two ships involved, the tanker is a US-registered boat and the Portuguese-flagged container ship. Do we know the nationalities of any of the casualties yet?
There will be a multitude of nationalities. They always are on these ships. You get many people, for instance, from the Philippines that will work on these ships, but it may be that some of the senior officers are from Western nations. We don't know at this stage the makeup of the crew in this individual case. We can bring you a bit of audio now, actually, that we got shortly after this collision. This was the dramatic moments afterwards, where the Coast Guard was putting out a general mayday to all vessels in the area to come in to assist, to try to be careful themselves, anyone that could offer assistance. This is what that Coast Guard audio radio message said.
Ceylon has collided with tanker Stena Immaculate in the outer anchorage. Both vessels are abandoning. Vessels who have firefighting equipment or who can assist with search and rescue, contact Humber Coast Guard on channel 16. Vessel Stena Immaculate is carrying Jet A1 fuel, which is on fire.
Well, you heard there that the oil tanker, the MV Immaculate, was carrying that aviation fuel, which is on fire, not just damaging very badly both of those vessels, but also on fire in the water, making that environment around the two vessels extremely difficult for those vessels, any rescue vessels, which is why all shipping's being told to keep a safe distance. But what we don't know at this stage is what the MV Ceylon, the cargo vessel, was carrying. We know that that had come from Grangemouth, the oil refinery, petrochemical plant up in Scotland, and was heading south from Grangemouth. So it's possible that it was also carrying flammable and potentially hazardous cargo as well. But the still images that we've seen from the close-up of that cargo vessel show very, very severe damage to that vessel, with many burnt out containers on the upper decks.
Reading here, if the Stena Immaculate was completely full of that Jet A1 aviation kerosene, she may have been carrying more than 58 million litres of fuel. Obviously, as well as the horror of the accident that we've seen, there's obviously a huge pollution issue here as well.
I'm struggling to hear you. If I could just ask the director to take his finger off the talkback button, please, so I could just hear you a bit better there, Dom. Could you just repeat that, please?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Mark, if the Stena Immaculate was completely full of A1 jet aviation kerosene, which we think she was, she may have been carrying more than 58 million litres of fuel. So obviously, as well as the horrors of what has happened, there's also a huge pollution issue here.
there's absolutely potential for a pollution disaster to unfold from this as well. The fact that fuel that's spilled into the sea is on fire, perhaps counterintuitively might be a good thing, because we know that in past oil tanker disasters, what sometimes they do when they have a very significant oil spill is to do a controlled burn on that oil to try and burn off as much of the oil as possible before it washes ashore. Now, this is not a controlled burn by any means, but some of that fuel, if it's on fire, that will certainly help burn off. But of course, it's carrying very, very significant quantities of oil, and if that vessel sinks, as it may well do, having been hit side on at a high rate of knots by another very big vessel, it could be crippled to the point where it sinks. Then you've got a completely different challenge for the maritime rescue authorities to deal with as well, because you'll have an oil tanker at the bottom of the Humber estuary with still many thousands of gallons of fuel on board and liable to leak at some point out into the Humber estuary.
Absolutely horrific. Mark White, thank you very much. Mark will be bringing us up to date with that breaking story throughout the rest of the show.
Well, another big story today. The Home Office has confirmed that the anti-Semitic Palestinian asylum seeker Abu Wadeh, who crossed the Channel last week, has been arrested.
This comes as GB News can reveal that a staggering 2,000 migrants have crossed the Channel in just over a week, half of this year's total.
Well, that number accounts, as Dawn said, for half the total of migrants who've crossed from France since the start of just this year alone, 2025, with 240 crossing in the 9th consecutive day yesterday.
OK, we're joined now by journalist Nicole Lambert. Nicole, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Nicole, I've been following your social media posts on this over the weekend as the story has developed. How horrific was it for you as a Jewish woman that this person was in the country just running around stating that he wanted to kill all Jews?
I think he's the kind of the top of the iceberg, isn't he? And that's relevant for all of us because while he is open on his social media about how he wants to kill Jews, there are, as you said, thousands of people coming in every day or every week. And we don't know what they're thinking because they're not saying on social media, but we know that they're mainly young men. They're coming from the Middle East. They have been brought up to hate Jews, but also to hate the West. And we're a country, we've had plenty of terrorism. We know what it looks like. And so the question is, what are we letting in? And of course, not all refugees are like that. A lot of them, they are escaping war. But it's a worry. It's a worry, of course, for the Jewish community because these people are brought up to hate us. But it's a worry for all of us.
Nicole, it seems extraordinary that this continues to happen. It's been a number of years now where the number of small boat crossings has been in the tens of thousands every single year. Of course, people got upset about the amount of money it costs to house people who arrive illegally, and that's an important concern. But the security issue is surely far, far more concerning. And yet our own judges seem to be preventing us from deporting people, from creating some sort of effective deterrent to stop people from crossing in the first place. Can you see an answer to this that is politically feasible?
Well, you know, as a former MP, it's such a knotty issue. And although Labour stopped the Rwanda plans, they haven't put a plan in place to stop it. And I'm sure that we all saw the story last week of an Albanian gangster who wasn't allowed to be returned to Albania because that would put his life at risk from other Albanian gangsters. So we're putting the rights of these people, these criminals, these dangerous people, above the rights of British people. I wish there was an easy answer. I wish I could hear some politicians talking about some feasible answers, but sadly they're not, are they? And it's worrying for all of us because we all want to know, what are we letting in? And as I say, like, most of them aren't posting their absolute hatred and their love of terrorism on social media, but we don't know about the others, do we?
Nicole, do you sometimes feel that maybe this government are putting terrorists or people arriving here illegally, because that's what they're doing, before ordinary British citizens?
Absolutely, and I'm sure I'm not the only person that feels like that. It's criminal. You know, we can't even deport criminals, rapists, people like that. We're struggling because the judges don't allow it. The human rights lawyers get involved. I don't know what the answer is. It's not an easy answer, of course, and it requires proper political thinking and probably political consensus, because I think everyone in this country sees it's a problem. And it's a problem not just for us in this country, it's a problem across Europe. And that's why we're seeing the rise of the far right, because the establishment isn't able to deal with it. But unless we deal with it, then we are going to see more people turning to the far right, who at least who seem to have simplistic answers, but who are at least talking about the issue.
How safe do you feel in this country at the moment, Nicole?
I mean, it's a concern. It has been a concern. It's always been a concern as a Jewish person for as long as I've lived. But the last few years have got worse and worse, and then it's ramped up even further from October 7. So every Jewish school has a team of security, has gates. Every synagogue, my own synagogue, they recently built security gates. There's CCTV, meaning that every corner is surrounded. There are 2 security guards on all the time. And then when Jewish people are actually there on holy days, then there's even more security.
Nicole, I'm so sorry, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us. Now, GB News has contacted the Home Office for comment, and in a statement they said,
"We are committed to ending small boat crossings which undermine our border security and restoring order to the asylum system to ensure that rules are respected and enforced." It's a long-standing rule that we never comment on individual cases or operational matters. The British public can be reassured that we take all steps necessary at all times to protect the nation's security.
We're both desperate to read that out, aren't we, Dawn?
Very much so, because neither of us believe it.
Well, we'll see. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Please don't go anywhere, because there's lots more coming up in today's show, including reports on the unfolding disaster off North East Yorkshire.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Now, as we go into tomorrow, we are going to have a northerly wind pushing through. That's going to bring some showers and also a change to something markedly chillier for many of us. That northerly, colder air will be coming down behind a cold front, which is currently pushing its way southwards across the country. This front's brought a few showers, a bit more cloud for a time, but behind it, we do have some clearer skies across parts of Scotland. And actually further south, there's quite a bit of cloud developing through the night across central southern parts of England and Wales, and with that some outbreaks of rain, particularly towards the southwest. Where we do get the clear skies though, temperatures are going to drop quite a few degrees lower than some recent nights. A touch of frost possible first thing tomorrow morning, maybe even some icy patches. But in the south, a milder start to the day because of the cloud here, and there will be some outbreaks of rain around, particularly across parts of the southwest. Devon, Cornwall may be getting off to a bit of a damp start, but that will quickly clear away. Then actually across the rest of England, Wales and into Northern Ireland, a lot of bright weather to start the day. But across Scotland, although there will be some clear skies overnight, it's going to quickly turn cloudier through tomorrow morning, and with that we are going to have a scattering of showers pushing down on that northerly wind. Those showers could be a bit wintry at times, so some sleet or snow over the higher ground, and there could be some heavier showers, also some showers skirting around North Sea coastal parts. But elsewhere, most areas having a generally dry day, albeit some sunny breaks, but quite a bit of cloud on offer. With that, temperatures are going to be lower than they have been recently, just about scraping into double figures at best, most places staying in single digits, so staying a bit chillier than it has been through some recent days. More showers to come as we go through the end of the day tomorrow. They are going to spread a bit further south, and still some sleet or snow possible over higher ground. Showers, that's the theme as we go through the rest of this week. Should turn drier by the weekend, but all the time staying a little bit chillier than of late.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could have £17,777 in tax-free cash to play with this spring. cash to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we're also going to give you not one, but 2 sought-after designer watches and the latest Mulberry handbag. How would winning that sound? For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Casualties have been reported in what is proving to be a very, very serious situation. We'll have the latest for you as we get it.
And what happened to my father should never, ever have happened. Those are the words of Katie Amess as Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has rejected calls for a public inquiry into the death of her father, Sir David Amess. She described the decision as an absolute insult and a betrayal to her family. We'll be hearing from Katie in this hour.
And some more breaking news for you. In the last hour, the Home Office has confirmed that the anti-Semitic Palestinian asylum seeker Abu Wadadi, who crossed the channel last week, has been arrested.
And this news comes as at least 150 migrants have crossed the channel illegally this morning in an unprecedented 10th straight day of small boat crossings. It takes the total who've crossed since the 1st of March to more than 2,200.
So thank you for your company this afternoon. Really appreciate it. It's an incredibly busy, packed show for you with lots of live breaking news. So please do send in your views and comments on what we're covering and anything you want to talk about, basically. It's very simple to get involved at gbnews.com/your say and join the conversation. But first, let's get those news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It is just coming up to 2 minutes past 2. We start with an update on the major rescue operation that is underway off the coast of East Yorkshire. That is after an oil tanker and a cargo ship collided in the North Sea near Hull. The tanker, believed to be the US-flagged MV Stena Immaculate, is on fire with lifeboats, a Coast Guard helicopter and firefighting teams on the scene. We now know that at least 32 casualties have been brought ashore at Grimsby, but some crew members remain unaccounted for. Witnesses have also reported a massive fireball at the site, around 10 miles offshore. The incident is ongoing, with the Coast Guard coordinating the emergency response. The family of Sir David Amess has slammed the Home Secretary for rejecting a public inquiry into his murder, calling it unacceptable and insulting. Yvette Cooper says it's hard to see how an inquiry would go beyond the trial of terrorist Ali Harbi Ali and a recent Prevent review. The attacker, an Islamic State fanatic, was referred to Prevent years before stabbing the veteran MP to death at his constituency surgery in 2021. Sir David's widow is urging the Prime Minister to now reconsider the possibility of an inquiry. Well, his daughter Katie says the response is adding salt to an open wound and accused the government of brushing them aside.
The Home Secretary has written to us ahead of our meeting to let us know that we will not be getting the public inquiry that we have been demanding. This decision is an absolute insult and a betrayal to my family and our father's memory.
A man in his 30s has been arrested for entering the UK without permission. He's believed to be the Palestinian asylum seeker Abu Wadi, who allegedly arrived on a migrant boat before posting extremist content online. And it comes on now the 10th day in a row that more small boats have reached UK waters. 150 migrants arrived this morning, taking the total since March the 1st to 2,200 people. The government, though, says it is cracking down on small boat crossings and strengthening border security with new police and immigration powers. 2 British diplomats are being expelled from Russia, accused of espionage in what's seen as the latest tit-for-tat move. Moscow says the pair carried out intelligence and subversive work and must leave within 2 weeks. It follows the UK's expulsion of a Russian diplomat last month, part of an ongoing diplomatic standoff. It also comes as the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has vowed to stand by Ukraine, pledging more defence spending and a coalition of the willing against Russian aggression. Moscow, though, has condemned his calls for a peacekeeping force as tensions between the two countries hit new lows. And Mark Carney says Canada will never, ever be part of the United States after winning the race to succeed Justin Trudeau as the country's Prime Minister.
Canada never, ever will be part of America in any way, shape or form.
Former Bank of England governor's vowing to take on Donald Trump in a growing trade war and says Canada will impose retaliatory tariffs until, he says, America shows Canada respect. Carney, who has never held elected office, won 86% of the vote and is expected to call a general election soon. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Now, though, it's over to Britain's newsroom.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back, and let's start now with that breaking news that the Coast Guard is responding to reports of a collision between a tanker and a cargo vessel off England's northeastern coast. Now let's get the latest with our Home and Security editor, Mark White.
Well, this air and sea rescue operation is still underway. So far, we've been told that 32 of those crew members on board both vessels have been taken ashore in Grimsby, described as casualties, but we don't know actually the extent of the potential injuries they might have suffered. Now, you're looking at the latest video that we have there that shows that massive plume of black smoke that's just engulfed the scene where both those vessels collided. This oil tanker, the MV Immaculate, which had come up from Greece, had been at anchor in the outer Humber estuary when the MV Ceylon, that cargo container ship, was heading south. It had come from the Scottish port of Grangemouth, the petrochemical processing plant at Grangemouth, and was heading to the Netherlands at the time. When it collided, it was doing some 16 knots, according to the Marine Traffic app that showed the vessel not slowing down at all and then colliding with the oil tanker side on. Now, witnesses and local officials in Grimsby have been speaking of a massive fireball that erupted at the point of collision, and that's why there are some concerns clearly for those who have now been rescued and brought ashore, the potential injuries that they might have suffered. A spokesman for the oil company, the oil tanker owners, has said that all of the crew of that oil tanker are safe and accounted for, but we haven't had the same all clear in terms of that cargo vessel, the MV Ceylon, at this point. But regardless of, the operations, of course, to get all those crew accounted for and safely ashore, there is still the massive operation that is underway in the Humber estuary to deal with the fires that have erupted and the inevitable pollution spillage that there will be as well.
Mark, I mean, from what we understand, the oil tanker was stationary, it was at anchor. The cargo ship travelling at speed rammed into it. And we don't know what happened to make that happen. Was it an engine failure? Was there, somebody who was in charge of the cargo ship having a heart attack? We just don't know that yet, because that is the big question at the moment. What caused that ship to ram into the tanker at that speed?
Well, those will be the key questions for the Marine Accident Investigation Branch, which is now beginning a formal inquiry into what happened here. I can tell you that a ship the size of this container ship will have had a crew manning the bridge 24 hours a day, especially, of course, when they're close to a coastline. They're going down through busy shipping lanes. That bridge would never be left unmanned. It's possible that there may have been some kind of hydraulics failure with the steerage system. We don't know at this stage, but clearly, according to that Marine Tracker app, looking at it, there was no deviation of the course at all. It just continued on its course at 16 knots, smashing right into the side of the MV Immaculate oil tanker.
Mark, just one very quick final question for you. Just seeing a report here that the tanker involved in the crash was part of a programme to have 10 ships capable of transporting oil for the US Army in times of need. That's according to American maritime officers. Do we know any more about that?
Well, the fact it was carrying aviation fuel gives you an indication of what the mission of this particular oil tanker might have been. It wasn't just carrying the likes of crude oil, Brent oil, that kind of oil that you would associate the big, heavy crude. This was aviation fuel, which, of course, in itself is highly flammable as well. So a spark created from a massive collision with another large vessel would certainly easily ignite that and explain why we saw and heard of this massive fireball that erupted when the MV Immaculate was hit side on.
Mark, thank you very much. Mark White will be bringing us up to date on that story throughout the rest of the programme.
Well, moving on to one of our other leading stories today. What happened to my father should never, ever have happened. Those are the words of Katie Amess, as the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has rejected calls for a public inquiry into the death of her father, Sir David Amess.
Yes, she described the decision as an absolute insult and betrayal to her family during a truly heartbreaking statement just a short while ago. Here's what she had to say.
Losing my father has stolen so much from us. In the weeks before his murder, he was helping me to plan my wedding, a day he had looked forward to more than anything. It was his absolute dream to walk one of his children down the aisle at the crypt at the Houses of Parliament. and we were just 6 weeks away from that dream. He had planned everything, from the flowers to the music. He had even planned a surprise photo shoot where my husband was going to wear the same suit that my dad had worn to marry my mum all those years before.
Well, joining us now to discuss this further is the Shadow Minister for Foreign Affairs, Andrew Rosendale, who was also an MP at the time of Sir David Amess's murder. Andrew, it's an absolutely tragic story, and of course Katie Amess has been an extraordinarily brave campaigner, but there are still many questions to be answered, aren't there?
Yes, I was there today at the press conference, and I saw Katie and the emotion she spoke with and the passion she spoke with, how brave she is to do this. But she's doing the right thing, because what happened to Sir David Amess was horrific. And the idea that the government are refusing to have any kind of independent public inquiry, I find is absolutely shameful. It is a betrayal of the Amess family, but it's also a betrayal of really all MPs that could potentially be at risk in the future. There needs to be protection for those in the public eye, particularly elected politicians. David, who was a very close and dear friend of mine, paid the ultimate price for his public service, and it's absolutely wrong that his widow, Lady Julia, and his daughter Katie are having to champion this and fight for the truth to be known. It's absolutely wrong. Government ministers should have made this decision a long time ago, both the last government and this government. Neither have dealt with it as it should have been dealt with, and I confirm my support for Julia and for Katie and the Amess family today, that we need a full and open, independent public inquiry. And what Yvette Cooper has done in writing that letter to the Amess family today is quite frankly shameful, and I hope the Prime Minister will reverse the decision that's been made.
The fight, and obviously we wish her every success. But we had Sybil Cash on, one of our former colleagues, earlier on in the show, and he was saying that, yes, of course, Prevent, there are a lot of questions to answer about the Prevent scheme, but ultimately we are continuing to fail to control who comes into this country. We've seen another 220 small boat crossings just today. Is there anything really we can do if we don't control our borders?
Well, I agree with you completely. So the Prevent system has clearly failed. And what we're finding is that the Prevent apparatus, if you like, seems to be focusing on the person that could potentially be the terrorist or the criminal, and trying to guide them away from that type of life. But it's not actually preventing the potential risks to the British people. And if we are letting people into our country who are could potentially do huge harm and commit crimes and acts of terrorism, then we're not doing the job that governments are elected to do, to look after the British people first. And that's what we should be doing.
Andrew, just quickly, one final question. What kind of message is this sending to other terrorists that may be planning to attack not just politicians, but ordinary people and people in responsible jobs?
Well, the tragedy of this is that David has been murdered, and it could have been prevented. It could have been dealt with, but the individual concerned that committed that atrocious act was not actually dealt with in the way that they should have been. And so he was free to murder. Now, this could happen again. So I believe that there needs to be a full review of all of this. We need to put the interests of the people of this country first and protect innocent British people, not just MPs, everybody, from potential acts of terrorism. This government and the previous government have failed to do what they should have done over Sir David Amess. I really do hope that this week there will be a change of stance, because I believe the British people and the Amess family deserve to have the truth, and that can only happen with a full and independent public inquiry.
Very much. That's Shadow Minister for Foreign Affairs, Andrew Rosendale there.
And we did speak to the Home Office and they gave us this response. Sir David Amess's murder was a terrible tragedy and our heartfelt thoughts continue to be with his family and friends. In the years since this cowardly attack, there have been several reviews asking how this could have been avoided. And we have seen significant improvements to the Prevent programme as well as stronger protections for MPs.
OK, today the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, rejects calls for a public inquiry into the death of her father, David Amess. And sorry. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. There's lots more coming up on today's show, so don't go anywhere. The latest from that horrific collision of the UK off the UK coast, where there have been 32 casualties. More of that live story coming up soon.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
I do think that there is extremities in how this has been approached with, you can't eat kebabs anymore. The Climate Change Committee isn't talking about banning meat. It's talking about reducing meat, perhaps having some incentives for plant-based diets. It's talking about doing small changes, not phasing out everything, doing small changes to move to a net zero future, a more sustainable future.
How can me not having a lodged on a combat, I don't know, China opening one coal-fired power station a week? Come on, this is pointless.
Well, there is other things that have been advised beyond just, reducing our meat consumption. There's things around the tax around flying and aviation, producing less fossil fuel imports and switching to more renewable power, upgrading the grid. There's a lot of other advisories collectively that moves us towards a net zero future. There is a few, of course, we can go down the route of, they can't eat the kebab anymore, but there's far more other things at play than just the kebab meat.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump, that man again, is just laughing at all this. Drill, baby, drill. You're not telling me that his cabinet are going to chow down on some quinoa. This is a red meat country leading the way, and if we had half a brain about us, we'd be drilling ourselves.
I come from an energy industry background. I work for a data intelligence company, Mapstand, as well. And what we are seeing is that what's happening in America is actually quite short-term thinking. It's not long-term thinking. Whereas in places in China, you're seeing a lot of innovation and green innovation because there is a huge economic opportunity.
Yeah, because they're selling it all to the West and polluting their atmosphere. We're offshoring our carbon footprint, and they're selling the solar panels back to us because we're the mugs.
We're also able to be the producers and also change our own energy so that we can also compete.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain, and we've been covering that dramatic and very emotional press conference with Katie Amess, the daughter of murdered Sir David Amess, who of course has now been refused a public inquiry into his murder by the Home Secretary. And I interviewed Katie a few weeks ago, actually just before she was about to have a meeting with the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. And she was telling me how since her father's murder, she's constantly campaigned, first to the previous government, the Conservative government, and now to this government, to have an inquiry inquiry, because we all know there were many, many failings of Prevent, and the man who murdered her father was actually referred to Prevent. He actually was taken to what's called the channel level of Prevent, so he was investigated, but then he was let go. And at the same time, there was a death threat to her father the day before his actual murder, which we don't think was related, but nevertheless, because it wasn't followed through, he still went ahead with that fateful surgery. And of course now that request for a public inquiry has been rejected. And of course Katie's question is, what does the government have to hide? You could kind of understand the previous government saying no, because those failures would have been under their watch. Not that that's an excuse. But what does this government have to hide?
Well, this is the big question. There's so many questions about this one, Miriam. I mean, you know, what Katie says, what kind of message is it sending to other terrorists that are planning attacks now? I mean, it's saying, well, we're not going to take it seriously, there's no inquiry. What has the government got to hide? And also, how many more are we going to have of Prevent messing up in this situation? I mean, those 3 little girls in Southport would still be alive if Prevent had been doing their job properly. Both the attacker in that case and the killer of David Amess were referred to Prevent as schoolboys.
Yes, and in the Southport case, what seemed to have happened was that because the killer, Axel Rudikabana, didn't fit neatly into any particular ideology, he didn't seem to be an Islamist from a kind of classical point of view. He was clearly violent, but because he didn't have a clear ideology, they dismissed him as not a danger. And the same perhaps with Ali Harbour Ali, who murdered Sir David Amess. We know he was an Islamist, but he was obviously able to cover this up at the time. So if Prevent doesn't have the legal powers to either lock people up, which obviously is a big question in a free country, or to investigate any further, what further powers could they possibly have?
Well, it's just, you know, the fact that it's called Prevent and manages to prevent absolutely nothing. I mean, Sir William Shawcross, when he reviewed how counter-terrorism and Prevent worked in this country, he said it is basically now so bad that it's leaving the public at risk. Not just MPs, but all of us at risk, because people are just literally, you turn up to Prevent and they say, are you a terrorist? You go, nah, not a terrorist, me. That's fine, off you go.
And the public seem to be doing their job and teachers and social workers of reporting people, but far more disproportionately, far more people are reported for far-right extremism than Islamist extremism, and yet we know that the vast majority of actual attacks carried out are Islamist. So there's obviously, in schools particularly, teachers are being far more diligent about reporting far-right views than they are about Islamist views.
Why are we so frightened about talking about this? Where MI5 say, right, MI5 say that Islamist terrorism is the biggest, the most significant threat in this country. So why are we tiptoeing around that issue when people are dying because of it?
Well, I think that you've answered your own question. I mean, Sir David Amess was killed, we think, because of his vote on Syria. Yeah. It was a direct result of how he potentially wanted to stand up to Islamic extremism. It is extremely concerning. But, you've got to also feel for the people who work for Prevent. I think we heard earlier that there's 60,000 referrals were made last year. Well, you're finding a needle in a haystack.
Well, the answer then maybe is to invest in Prevent, make sure it is fit for purpose. It has to be one of the most important things in this country now. And the other thing, Miriam, when we keep discussing this, we keep coming back to who is coming into this country on those boats. We don't know who they are. The latest example of the whatever his name was, I can't remember. I don't even want to reuse it, to be honest with you. But boasting about he wants to kill all Jews on Facebook. He wasn't even hiding what he wants to do. He got off a boat, was put in a hotel.
Absolutely.
And probably getting 40 quid allowance a week as well.
Exactly. And you think the kind of excessive health and safety legislation we have, for example, or the fact that the government's trying to ban smoking to protect our health. And yet, a far more pressing concern is tens of thousands of people. We have no idea who they are, no idea who their criminal record, but you can't smoke. No. But never mind, we're going to let in potential terrorists.
And we're going to monitor what you eat as well.
Yeah, exactly. But, we can't advertise McDonald's before 9 o'clock at night in case a child sees it. But you might be going to school with an Afghan asylum seeker who claims to be 16, but is actually 25. Complete disproportionate assessment of risk.
Yeah, and we don't know for sure, but we know there are at least 800 people on the security watch list of MI5.
Yeah.
800. Now, we don't know for sure because obviously they don't release these figures, but that is a worrying number of people. And how many people have slipped through? Well, Southport we've mentioned, Nottingham we've mentioned, Westminster Bridge, London Bridge, Manchester Arena. The list is endless of people that attack us, and we are supposed to be monitoring them.
Well, and the cost of doing that as well.
Oh, and people say, oh, yeah, let's have Shimon Begum back. Yeah, good idea. We'll keep an eye on her, won't we?
Yeah. Absolutely impossible.
What do you think? gbnews.com/your say. OK.
We now have more on this with our national reporter, Charlie Peters, who was at the press conference earlier with Katie Amess and joins us now from Westminster. Charlie, bring us up to date.
Well, Miriam and Dawn, that press conference this morning was extraordinary for the emotional power behind the words of Katie Amess, also speaking on behalf of her mother, who had a stroke soon after the murder, and that's why she was not able to be here today, as the family reacts to that news that the government is not going to grant them that full public inquiry. Now, in many of the sections of Katie Amess's statement, she delivered them through tears, and one section in particular stood out for me when she urged parliamentarians to visit Sir David Amess's grave. She said that she was filled with burning anger and a desire for justice. She also said throughout her statement that she felt as though the murder of her father, the terrible terror attack that happened at his constituency surgery, was being watered down and brushed under the carpet. She said that she felt as though important questions were not being answered. Well, we know now that the letter they received from the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, was received on Thursday, and that the family read it essentially in disbelief. In one line, Yvette Cooper says that, "I realise that this is not the answer that you were hoping for." She says that throughout the criminal trial, the Prevent Learning review, and also the coroner's report, that several sections that contributed to the murder had been assessed. The Home Secretary has argued in that letter to the family that there are no additional questions to be answered. But Katie Amess doesn't believe that. She thinks there are more questions to be answered, and I spoke with her earlier about her campaign to have those questions put back to the government. Katie, this morning Dan Jarvis said that his thoughts were with you and your family as the Home Office said that they would not, and the government said they would not push forward with a full public inquiry into Sir David's murder. Do you think that his thoughts are enough?
Absolutely not. Thoughts and words mean nothing to me. At this point, we need action. And I'm being denied the action that is their duty to give me. My father was their friend. He was their colleague. He worked with them for 40 years. Thoughts and words mean nothing. I need action.
You spoke very movingly in your press conference about how you wake up every morning hoping that this is a nightmare that you're just going to wake up from and break free from. Obviously, that's not the case. It must have been so painful for you to go through this process, to fight against the system when you're fighting your own struggles in this case.
You can't move on. You can't begin to grieve and think about what your future life might look like when you're still fighting for the answers. This happened to my dad in 2021. It's 2025. Why am I still here? No offence, having to speak to you and hold press conferences. This should have been launched immediately after the attack, and there's no sense of drawing a line under things and moving on with the rest of our lives until we get the answers. My dad wouldn't give up on me, so I'm not going to give up on him.
Now, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has said that after the Prevent Learning review and the coroner's report, there are no additional questions. What questions do you have about your father's murder?
Well, no questions have been answered. That Prevent Learning review was just a piece of paper. They didn't interview anybody. They didn't investigate anything. It was just a list of timelines and email trails. It didn't mean anything. I need to know who failed him, why they failed him, what has been done to stop an attack happening like this again, and we need to hold people accountable and change the system that allowed his murderer to go back into public and commit this terrible attack.
You've also referred to other inquiries launched, such as those into the Nottingham and the Southport incidents. Do you feel as though there's a reason why your father's murder is being treated differently to those two incidents?
Well, Yeah, I mean, something obviously happened in the background that we don't know about and that we're not meant to know about. Because why did they immediately launch an inquiry into Southport and release their Prevent Learning review? Why did they allow cameras into 10 Downing Street when they were announcing the Nottingham inquiry? What is it in my father's case that the Tories and the Labour Party don't want to see out there? And I intend to find out what it is and to expose it and to hold those people accountable.
We talk about holding people to account. Do you think that people are fleeing from this call for an inquiry to protect those who may be responsible for those failings?
Absolutely, because right now they're just brushing me under the carpet, sweeping me under the rug. Nobody wants to answer any questions because they're all protecting whoever made this mistake. They just want me to shut up and go away, but I'm not going to.
You spoke on behalf of your mother at this press conference today. When you received the letter on Thursday from the Home Secretary, what was your reaction with her?
I started shaking instantly. I could not believe that I was reading these words. It is an absolute insult and it is a betrayal to my father's legacy and his memory. My mum, I messaged her saying there is no inquiry. She could not even read the letter for hours because she said, I'm so angry right now, I don't know what I'll do when I read that letter. Then, of course, it floods of tears and just disbelief and heartbreak all over again. My poor mother had a stroke after it happened to my father. That's why she's not standing with me today. Can they not see the pain and the torment and the torture that they are still putting my father's family through?
Now, in the press conference, you also referred to the fact that you're, of course, going to this meeting on Wednesday, but we're not going to be there with you.
No.
The media won't be there. Why do you think the media are being shut out of that meeting? And do you want us there?
I want you guys there because it's only because of you guys that my story is out there. I was meant to have been swept away years ago. It's only because of kind, caring people in the press and the public that people are talking about this. I want you guys to be there so you can see what is being said. Why was Nottingham allowed the press there? It's because they were going to announce a review, an inquiry, and they wanted to look good. That is why we're not being allowed, because right now they're not announcing an inquiry and they don't want that on camera.
When the government rejected your call for a public inquiry, how do you think that message was received by those who might wish to do harm to other MPs, other would-be terrorists? Do you think they'll be enthused and maybe even happy about this announcement?
Yeah, to me it says bring it on. We're not going to investigate you. Come and kill a member of parliament in a church holding his constituency. We won't do anything about it. We won't ask any questions. We'll just do paper review after paper review. So all they've done is further incensed people to commit these terrible attacks. And I'm telling you right now, unless something is done, we will repeatedly be in this same situation.
How much support have you had from politicians within the Labour Party privately about your request for a public inquiry?
I have heard from the Southend MP who says he's going to support us, and now it means going against Sir Keir and Yvette Cooper. I will really much welcome his continued support because that's going against his bosses. Other than that, I don't believe I've heard from any Labour MPs that I know of.
I saw Andrew Rosendale, Tory Member of Parliament, in the room today, but you were obviously very critical of the Conservatives as well. Have there been other politicians supporting you in private as well, or do you feel it's a bit of a personal campaign at this point?
It's definitely personal. Andrew Rosendale, and I forgot to mention him during the conference, which I apologise for, he's been a great supporter. He's going to now go back and call other MPs to join the campaign. Anna Firth, when she was in power, she tried to help us. Kemi and Pretty, they met with my mother privately and said that they're going to support us. So now is the time for people to come out and to stand up in the chambers and to say, we support the Amess family. What are you hiding? Let's do this inquiry.
Well, those are the questions that Katie Amess will put to the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper on Wednesday at that Downing Street meeting. The family were absolutely clear this morning. They believe that terrorists will be licking their lips after this announcement. They say that if you are someone being radicalised online and you're keen to harm an MP, that Prevent will not be held to account. Obviously, that's a very charged perspective, and the Home Office and the government will reject that severely. They say that they've done several reviews looking into this case in particular, and there's also been the Shawcost review, which assessed Prevent and made several recommendations recommendations that have been enacted upon. But Wednesday is the next time Katie Amess will have her chance to fight for justice for her family.
Charlie Peters there with that report on the Katie Amess interview earlier.
Incredibly brave lady, and speaks very, very honestly as well. And lots of you are agreeing with her. I just want to read a message out from Grumpy Granda. Good afternoon, Grumpy. Grumpy says, I think it's time our government took public safety much more seriously. Nobody feels safe anywhere. We shouldn't have to feel this way. And lots of you are echoing those sentiments. You just simply do not feel this government are putting your safety before the rights of asylum seekers, people coming over on the boats and doing God knows what.
Absolutely. And the news today that they're going to expand prison capacity in case of more riots. Well, that's all very well. We need enough prison capacity. But there's a much simpler way to cut crime.
To stop us rioting is looking after the British public who put you in your jobs in the first place. Any case, rant over. Now, the other breaking story is an oil tanker and cargo ship have collided off the coast of East Yorkshire. 32 casualties have been reported in what is proving to be a very serious situation. We're joined now by David McFarlane, Director, Maritime Risk and Safety Consultants Limited. David, thank you very much for joining us. What's your take on the situation today?
It's a difficult one. At the moment, it's going to be purely speculation. But in theory, no two ships should collide. There's collision regulations that have been in place since 1972. They're there to be followed. It's an international law. And if they are followed, the collision simply won't happen. So what has happened? I have just no idea.
Well, we understand that the fuel ship, the Stena Immaculate, was actually anchored at the time, so it was completely stationary. And the cargo ship careered into it at 16 knots in a straight line. Now, how do these cargo ships work? Do they have an autopilot system? But if so, is there supposed to be somebody on watch? Could this have been simply human error?
It certainly sounds like it is human error. But to answer your first question, yes, there has to be somebody on watch. It doesn't matter how much electronic systems you have in place. Somebody needs to keep a lookout by sight on the bridge, and the bridge is manned at all times. Whether somebody has had a heart attack or something on the bridge, who knows? But something has gone drastically wrong, and there'll be a lot of questions needed to be answered. In saying that, the oil tanker as well should have taken some steps to try and communicate with the small container vessel. It would have been looking like a collision would have been imminent, probably when the ships were about 4 miles apart, reducing in distance all the time. And by that stage, the oil tanker should have identified the ship on its radar using the automatic identification system, AIS. It would have given the name of the ship, what kind of ship it was, and it would have been able to call up that vessel on the VHF radio and sent a warning to it saying, look, you're on a collision course with me, I can't get out of the way, I'm at anchor. If that had failed, then it's back to basics, and the ships have very loud horns on board, and I would like to have thought that there would be a big blast from the ship's whistle, which if nobody was on the bridge of the so long, then it would maybe have alerted other people on that ship to the risk of collision. But at this moment, it's just speculation. We don't really know what's happened.
How unusual, Adam, is it for a ship to be travelling that fast when we understand the oil tanker was stationary, was anchored, but the cargo ship did seem to be going very fast in an area where it's just literally not far off the coast?
Yeah, 16 knots is not fast. Container ships, that's their sort of average speed. I wouldn't have expected that ship to go any slower than that. You know, you've got plenty of time to get out the way if you are maintaining a proper lookout. So it's not overly fast. The area does have a lot of ships, but it's not overly congested. The collision regulations, again, point out that all ships should proceed at a safe speed at all times. 16 knots in this situation may have been a safe speed.
And in terms of the rescue efforts, how will that be hampered by the type of cargo, namely highly flammable fuel here? Does that prevent rescue vessels from coming close?
It can do. There'll be specialised salvage vessels going out with major firefighting capabilities on board, no doubt. They will be able to get up close to the vessel. But what I've seen so far on images, it looks like the majority of the most severe fire is on the container ship. And these containers can carry a lot of highly dangerous and explosive substances.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. McFarlane, who joined us there, maritime expert. And we're now joined by GBNews reporter Anna Riley, who is live on the ground in Withensea, East Yorkshire. Anna, please bring us up to date.
Yes, we're here at the spot about 13 miles out of where that incident happened on the East Yorkshire coast at around 10 o'clock this morning. We know that so far 32 casualties have been brought ashore. They're being given treatment in Grimsby. Some crew members are yet to be accounted for after that collision between an oil tanker and a cargo ship just 13 miles out here on the North Sea this morning. We know that lifeboats and a Coast Guard helicopter were called to the collision in the Humber estuary after a US-flagged tanker called MV Stena Immaculate appears to have been hit whilst at anchor by Portuguese-flagged container So Long. And we've seen footage that just shows the billowing smoke that was in the air after this collision happened this morning, and that is still going on now. You can't quite see behind us now as it's such a cloudy day, but we've heard that it was in fact a fireball in the air after this collision. That's what Martin Boyers, the chief executive of the Port of Grimsby East, said. He said that 13 casualties were initially brought in on a Windcat 33 vessel, followed by another 10 on a harbour pilot boat and 9 others on a pilot's vessel. Mr. Boyers said that he'd been told there was a massive fireball, but he said it's too far out to sea, about 10 miles, but we've seen the vessels bringing him in, and that they must have sent a mayday out. Earlier on GB News we did hear the Coast Guard alerting people of what had happened as well, and asking anyone nearby to give assistance, and other cargoes and ships in the area to stay away. We know that flames are still burning, of course, with an oil tanker being involved. It's not known how long these flames will burn and what in fact the clean-up effort involved will be. We know that the So Long approach from the north of a speed of 16 knots, around 20 miles an hour, while en route from the Scottish port of Grangemouth to Rotterdam, and that data has been seen from the ship tracking site Marine Traffic. It seemed that that ship was moving and the other was stationary when this collision happened. It's not yet known what caused the collision. We do know that evidence has been gathered and next steps are being determined following this collision. That's what marine inspectors say. And the UK Coast Guard has said it's assessing the likely counter-pollution response that could be required following this collision. They said the incident remains ongoing and assessment of the likely counter-pollution response required has been enacted. And as we have more information on this news story, we will bring it to you.
Of that horrific crash between an oil tanker and a cargo vessel, bringing us up to date there. Now, there's plenty more coming up on today's show, but before that, Anna, thank you very much. But before that, we have Martin Daubney, who is up at 3 o'clock, always with a cracking show. Martin, live in the studio, this studio for once. What have you got for us?
Well, so at 4:30 today, there's a debate in Parliament, 200,000 signatures. Close the borders, suspend all immigration for 5 years. Expected to fall on deaf ears. But do they have a point? Are we at a point now where we need to suspend immigration, at least from certain countries? Crime data out today by a nationality for the first time, covering that on Faroes tonight. Astonishing boom in sex crimes from places like Afghanistan, from Syria. 500 times more likely to be a drug offender if you're from, guess where? Albania. Who would have guessed it? The obvious evidence is there. Our policymakers do nothing about it. Is it time for something more radical, something more drastic? Chris Philp, got him on the show, the Shadow Home Secretary. He's suddenly saying, let's have a cap on visa numbers. You had 14 years to do it, mate.
Yeah.
How come we didn't do it when you were in power? The lunatics have taken over the asylum. Our borders are totally out of control. Once again, it's Groundhog Day.
It's interesting you're talking about that, Martin. It's a good one, because lots of people are messaging already about how they feel unsafe.
Yeah.
Unsafe because of the story that broke over the weekend with that asylum seeker posting a Facebook killing all Jews, wanting all Jews dead, who was escorted, put into a hotel, given £40 a week, has been arrested now, thank God. But we don't know who these people are. Many people saying, of all ages and both sexes, they just do not feel safe in this country anymore.
And that's the ones we know about.
Yes.
What about the ones we don't know about that walk among us?
Yeah, absolutely terrifying stuff.
There's always many, many excuses, and the kind of economic orthodoxy for such a long time has been, well, of course we can't close the borders, we need people to work, we need labour force, but I think that's been proven can be completely false now, isn't it?
Well, of course it has, because, GDP per capita, the only thing that really counts, is going down in advance of those numbers. No. A lot of people think it's time to close the borders, at least in some sort of temporary measure, and crack on with putting Britain first.
Indeed.
Very interesting. Just want to read this one message out from Carol, which will allude to what you're talking about. I think before we feel safe in this country, it will take a terrorist attack on Parliament for them to stand up and take notice of what people are feeling out here.
We already had one of them. Well, one of them a few years ago. That's why there's crash barriers out in Westminster. Nothing got done then.
Yeah, but that was then. This is now.
Well, I look forward to hearing from you in just a few minutes. But first, if you're in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Well, it's actually rather unsettled across much of Europe with heavy rain and thunderstorm. This is all to do with an area of low pressure, so bringing spells of rain and some heavy and frequent downpours across much of Spain and into Italy. The best of the sunshine will be towards the far, far east across parts of Greece. Temperatures here not doing too bad at around 18 or 19 degrees. And we hold on to some heavy showers through the week as well. Temperatures up to 20 degrees.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
We want to spruce up your spring with an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash that you can spend however you like. But that's not all, as you'll also receive not one, but two brand new designer watches and a fabulous Mulberry handbag. For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Corton Beach is not a naturist beach. Lewd behaviour will not be tolerated and may be recorded by CCTV and reported to the police.
It says causing an offence to others is a criminal. Causing offence to others is a criminal offence, and all cases will be reported for prosecution. And a spokesman then says we're not targeting or trying to outlaw the naturist. The parish council recognises that naturism in the UK is legal.
So what are they doing then?
Well, let's talk to the organiser to find out. The British Naturism Eastern Regional, Nigel Newman. Shows us now. Morning, Nigel. Sorry, I think it's the first time I've interviewed somebody without their top on. But, right, Nigel, what's going on down there? Because I think we pretty much support your right to be able to, swing free on a nice warm day.
Well, the thing is, Corton Beach in Suffolk is very, very popular and has been since the 1970s for naturists. And one of the reasons for that is right next to a car park. with a cafe with toilets, and this is bit's important, there's a ramp that goes right down to the top of the beach, which is ideal for disabled naturists. And that's one of the reasons that it's so well attended over the years. And what's happened is back in December, this sign appeared, great big yellow sign with black writing saying, warning, as you read out, Corton Beach is not a naturist beach. Well, that's not accurate because every beach is a naturist beach. Naturism is not unlawful. And the sign then goes on to suggest, because it's in the very next sentence, that lewd behaviour will not be tolerated. Well, British naturism totally agree with that statement. Lewd behaviour should not be tolerated. But lewd behaviour and naturism are two completely different things.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. King Charles will mark Commonwealth Day today with his annual address at Westminster Abbey in the next hour.
Let's get more from our reporter Adam Cherry, who joins us live from Westminster Abbey. Adam, what are you looking at?
Can hear the bells, but maybe he can't hear us. Adam, you're live on TV.
With him there. You can't? Oh, fine. Whatever.
Well, we can see him. So I think there's going to be some sort of service in Westminster Abbey, and the King is going to address Commonwealth leaders.
About how it's all about unity and sticking together, and And what is that? Has Adam been down the pub? Is that the leading question here?
Well, earlier he was showing us some protesters who were holding big banners saying, "Not my king." You know, people who are Republican, anti-monarchist. But of course, the irony is that if they're British citizens, Charles is their king, whether they like it or not.
Well, exactly. I mean, the main message from Charles today will be no more important task than to restore disrupted harmony of our entire planet, which is, of course, the most important message, and also announcing 4 days of events to mark the E-Day, which we're kicking off on Bank Holiday Monday, May the 5th.
Commonwealth is a really interesting organisation, isn't it? Because it's much more informal than something like the EU or the UN. But actually, it's done an extraordinary job of bringing all sorts of different countries together across the world with different interests, but you know, who largely want to work together for trade, for culture,
well,
those kind of ideas.
It's like, you know, it's always imperialistic, nationalism, and you should apologise for it. It's like, well, actually, most people want to belong to it. It's actually quite a good thing.
Exactly. And actually, there were 3 countries in Africa recently who have joined who have no association whatsoever with the British Empire. They were never colonies, but they've seen what the Commonwealth is doing and they want to be part of it.
And it's a good thing, yes. Is Adam coming back to us, or has he left us completely? No, apparently not. Right, OK. Well, the other thing King Charles is doing is paying tribute to marvellous acts and musical acts from around the Commonwealth. And his favourite, Miriam, can you guess?
No, you did tell me. Bob Marley.
Bob Marley, yeah, absolutely. But also, it's going around the Commonwealth. Also, his final track was Upside Down by Diana Ross.
There you go.
And who do you think you like from Australia?
Kylie Minogue. Well, I don't have any objection at all to the King enjoying music and telling us about it. Not sure about a partnership with Apple. It seems slightly commercial to me.
Yeah.
But I suppose you've got to have some sort of vehicle for getting your musical taste out there.
Yeah, no, he did it quite well, actually. It's Charles the DJ. I thought he did it quite well, to be honest with you.
It is quite funny if you think back 500 years ago. What would the Tudors have thought about the role of the monarchy being to share their musical preference?
We have to move on, despite those protesters being there with a dinosaur.
Absolutely. Well, I support the monarchy. But there are big questions about what it will look like in the future, of course there are. Anyway, thank you very much for watching us. Good afternoon, Britain. It's been a packed show.
It has been very packed. Thank you very much for your company, but don't go anywhere because the wonderful Martin Daubney is up next, keeping you company with all those live breaking stories. Miriam, we'll see you tomorrow.
I will.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers. Sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Now, as we go into tomorrow, we are going to have a northerly wind pushing through. That's going to bring some showers and also a change to something markedly chillier for many of us. That northerly, colder air will be coming down behind a cold front, which is currently pushing its way southwards across the country. This front's brought a few showers, a bit more cloud for a time, but behind it, we do have some clearer skies across parts of Scotland. And actually further south, there's quite a bit of cloud developing through the night across central southern parts of England and Wales, and with that some outbreaks of rain, particularly towards the southwest. Where we do get the clear skies though, temperatures are going to drop quite a few degrees lower than some recent nights. A touch of frost possible first thing tomorrow morning, maybe even some icy patches. But in the south, a milder start to the day because of the cloud here, and there will be some outbreaks of rain around, particularly across parts of the southwest. Devon, Cornwall may be getting off to a bit of a damp start, but that will quickly clear away. Then actually across the rest of England, Wales and into Northern Ireland, a lot of bright weather to start the day. But across Scotland, although there will be some clear skies overnight, it's going to quickly turn cloudier through tomorrow morning, and with that we are going to have a scattering of showers pushing down on that northerly wind. Those showers could be a bit wintry at times, so some sleet or snow over the higher ground, and there could be some heavier showers, also some showers skirting around North Sea coastal parts. But elsewhere, most areas having a generally dry day, albeit some sunny breaks, but quite a bit of cloud on offer. With that, temperatures are going to be lower than they have been recently, just about scraping into double figures at best, most places staying in single digits, so staying a bit chillier than it has been through some recent days. More showers to come as we go through the end of the day tomorrow. They are going to spread a bit further south, and still some sleet or snow possible over higher ground. Showers, that's the theme as we go through the rest of this week. Should turn drier by the weekend, but all the time staying a little bit chillier than of late.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter